Welcome to Chase Field, home of the Arizona Diamondbacks. We are here for the 2025 MLB Draft Combine. We got the stars, we got the stripes, we got some stars in the booth with Jonathan Mayo, Jim Callis. I'm Jesse Borick. Welcome to the MLB Draft Combine High School Showcase game. It's only about a balmy 112 degrees outside today in the desert, but the action's hot in here. We're going to see some of the top high school talent in the country try to make one last big impression. I'm joined by Jonathan Mayo, Jim Callis. Guys, how excited are we for some baseball tonight?
No, this is good stuff. This is a chance for these young players to come out with 30 teams paying attention and show off their stuff in a controlled game setting, but it's a game setting nonetheless. And I think it's always good information for teams to have an idea of how young players are going to rise up or meet an occasion such as this.
We had about 6 hours worth of workouts today, and it's fun watching guys take BP and throw bullpens and such. But I think it's more interesting to see it in actual game action, where hitters aren't just getting 50 miles an hour thrown over the middle of the plate, and pitchers aren't just throwing a bullpen to a catcher. They're trying to get hitters out. So, looking forward to it. In past years, it's not necessarily a lot of these guys are going to sign or get drafted this year. There have been some names. Zaire Hope, who I think is one of our, we all love watching play in the fall league last year for the Dodgers. One of the best prospects in baseball. He played in this game a couple of years ago. And so there are Barrett Kent. I know Jonathan does our Angels coverage. Barrett Kent was a guy who got, I want to say, $800,000. I think a pretty sizable bonus after pitching this game. So we'll probably see when draft day comes around and the signings are all done. A handful of these guys will sign, and the rest of them will go off to college, and we'll see them in a few years.
Yeah, and we're going to start right at the top. You're going to see some familiar names tonight right there. Bruin Agbayani, the son of people of a certain age that grew up in Long Island in New York, such as myself. They know his father, Benny Agbayani. We've got some other big-time names here, Jordan Serrano. And this game tonight, if you're tuning in, could be a little bit different than your traditional game. Just to get some of these kids work on the mound, we're going to be looking at around 25 to 30 pitches for each pitcher, as opposed to your 3-out, get out of an inning. So this is more of a showcase to get some guys on the board, get them some at-bats in this big league environment.
Thus, you see 3 designated hitters in the lineup, so everyone's going to get a chance to get at least an at-bat.
And there's 14 pitchers here. Everybody's going to go an inning, so everybody will get work.
Aiden Barrientos. Jim, I know that's a guy, TCU commit, live fastball, a little bit of a slider as well. What do we have on Barrientos?
Yeah, he's one of the younger guys in the draft. He won't be quite 18 on draft day. 6'1", 190 from Katy High School in Texas. Really good at the area code games last summer. Just been kind of an okay spring, which is why he's pitching in this game. Low 90s fastball, decent curveball and changeup. TCU commit, who if he doesn't go real high in the draft, those guys are usually pretty hard to sign.
And you'll see sometimes, and I'm not saying that it'll happen with Barrientos, but we were talking about this a little bit before we started. There will be high school guys who have been a part of this draft combine, if not in this game, or who do go out, and you see them get drafted later in the later rounds, and they sign for overslot bonuses because teams have bonus pool money left over. So just because you don't hear someone like Aiden Barrientos' name get called in the first round or two, that doesn't mean that it's impossible for him to get the payday necessary to keep him from heading to campus.
Yeah, last year, we saw Trey Gregory Alford, who I've seen on the prep scene for a couple of years now. Got to see him back at State's Play a couple of years ago. He was here throwing BBs during his bullpen session, and that's a kid that went in the 11th round. Angels popped him, gave him a huge overslot bonus. I believe it was a record-setting 11th round bonus for Gregory Alford for him to join pro ball. Just made his pro debut a couple of weeks ago in the Complex League. So it's certainly possible for some of these guys that they may not go off the board in the first 2 rounds, but they may still hear their name called this July.
I just want to interject. They just showed the pool next year, by the way. If we call this game,
I don't know what we're waiting for. It cool everybody off.
We got to do it from the pool. There it is. I picture you, Jesse, with your feet dangling in the water.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Get a floaty for me there. Absolutely.
Maybe have a grill. You have a grill.
Is that allowed?
Cooking burgers and hot dogs out there.
And we go from Jim Callis talking about the grill to the first pitch of the game today. Bruin Agbayani stepping in, Hawaii native.
Yeah, he's the best player from Hawaii this year. We've certainly had our fair share of talent from there before. He's got a chance to be a good hitter. He's an above-average runner. He's strong, probably ends up in a corner outfield position. Kind of built like his dad a little bit, I think. So, not the tallest guy in the world, compact, but he's got some feel to hit, and there's some tools there.
Jim, how tough is it? We talked about you're basically the grandfather of this game in a lot of ways.
I don't know about that. Sure.
How tough is it to come into this environment and to really want to impress, but also maybe not overexert yourself, extend your strike zone, swing at pitches you shouldn't be swinging at?
I think whenever you see these games, you do have some of that. But, most of the guys in this game are veterans of the showcase circuit. They were in showcase events. Going into your senior year, you're playing all kinds of showcase events and the like. So this isn't the first time they've necessarily been in this. But, yeah, the pitchers are always going to throw a little bit harder when they're going, especially in a game like this where they're going one inning. It's like the futures game.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to pace themselves. Your Barrientos has been throwing 93, 94, and there's another 93. That's usually the upper end of where he usually operates. And I think with the hitters, sometimes you're getting 11, 12 guys in the lineup. You're getting 7 in a game. You might get 2 at bats. You're looking to make something happen. You don't really want to walk in a game like this.
You don't want to walk, but Bruin Agbayani will certainly take a walk. The Hawaii Gatorade Player of the Year in 2024.
The first year when they were going to play 6 high school games, and some of them got rained out when we were in Cary, if you walked, they sent a guy to first, and then you got to hit again.
Swing the bat.
Which meant keeping score fun.
Yes, you gotta swing the bat. I think that's fair.
Jordan Serrano coming in now from the Stony Brook School. Some people in this booth, that's their neck of the woods. Serrano, right-handed hitter here, facing the righty Barrientos here in the first inning. Welcome to the 2025 Draft Combine game. If you're just tuning in, I'm Jesse Borick alongside Jonathan Mayo and Jim Callis. We're going to be bringing you the action here for the next, 90 minutes, 2 hours or so. Some of the best high school prospects in the country here, live from Chase Field, home of the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Serrano's kind of this raw high school hitter that you often see from the Northeast. Did not have the greatest swing. There's a lot of swing and miss concerns, but there's some raw power there. He runs well. There are some tools there that if you think he just needs reps, that might be worth taking a look.
Yeah, you hear that a lot, Jonathan, the Northeast up and in on Serrano. You hear that a lot, the Northeast players. Maybe there's somewhat of a bias in the scouting community because they don't get as many reps year-round as some other guys get, but that doesn't mean that you can't find talent out of those cold weather states.
No, of course not. Sometimes they're going, he's committed to go to Wake Forest, right? He goes on to college in 3 years from now. I feel for the longest time Vanderbilt had cornered the market on especially New England guys. Sometimes
Tim Corbin's from that way.
Yeah, and it can work to the advantage of college programs because they can take the time to let those guys develop, and sometimes those guys get into pro ball and the same thing happens. Nice piece of hitting.
Rip to the other side here. Agbayani, nice run, going to take third. Starts setting them up. Ooh. Good heads-up base running there from Serrano. Going to have 2 runners in scoring position now for Diego Rosa coming up. It's just a good piece of hitting. Takes the fastball where it's pitched down on the outside corner, take it right out to right field.
And that goes to what you're talking about. There's a good example of a guy not trying to do too much. He didn't try to turn on that pitch, hit the ball where it was pitched, 92 miles an hour, and smoked it the other way.
Especially impressive for a guy who had a lot of swing and miss issues plaguing him during the year. He was able to hit the reset button a little bit, and here he is with that nice piece of hitting.
And I think it's an interesting situation for Barrientos as well. Going to get to see how he deals with a second and third situation. I know nobody out. We're not truly keeping outs here. Like he has to get 3 outs to get out of the inning, but good situation for scouts to see.
You get to see him pitch out of the stretch now, back on the windup with 2 runners in scoring position. All of it's good information.
Oh,
cue shot.
Bad hop off the bag. Hit the bag. Went over the first baseman's head.
You'll take it. That in the scorebook, you can write down that was a laser beam. That's going to be a 2 RBI knock there for Diego Rosa.
Hit it 59 miles an hour off the bat, but well placed.
Number 33, Ty Briscoe.
Tell all of his friends.
A double is a double.
Yeah.
2-run double.
Jonathan, you were just mentioning how getting to be here in this event for scouts to see different scenarios for players. How valuable do you think that is based on they've got this Rolodex of information over the course of a season? Now you can really see what a guy looks like on a big league field. do they put a lot of stock into one game like this, or is it more?
No, they don't. I mean, it's information. First of all, do you want to explain to our younger viewers what a Rolodex is?
Somebody might, Jim. Did you bring a Rolodex to the booth today?
He carries
you
a
might
big
have
one
had
with him
a
at all
Rolodex.
times.
Yeah,
It's all in my head.
A Rolodex is sort of like a contact list, but on paper. And anyway, no, it's not. You're not going to put too much stock in it. Like Jim said, a lot of these guys played against a high-level competition on the summer showcase circuit. That is very valuable information. Then they're scouted all spring in their senior seasons. This is a one-off game. Is it information that can be used? Of course it is, but it's not going to really move the needle. Just like the batting practice sessions we saw earlier today aren't going to move the needle that much. Part of the combine, they're doing interviews with teams. That probably has more value than just about anything else. I know, Jim, you and I are in agreement there.
Yep.
It's a shot of Eric Borba, the former Orange Lutheran coach who's now working for USA Baseball.
I mean, if you're scouting Aiden Barrientos, you saw him all last summer, you saw him all spring. Having him pitch an inning tonight, it shouldn't drastically change your opinion of him. And it can help, and maybe it reinforces something you think. But you're not going to, if you had Aiden Barrientos, let's say, we've got him valued as a 7th rounder. If he comes out throwing 96 tonight, you're not going to be like, oh, 3rd round.
Well, we saw that last year, right? PJ Morlando was a kid that a lot of folks had, maybe by some standards had a bit of a down year on the South Carolina high school circuit. He came here, he was hitting some bombs. Marlins popped him in the 1st round. Was that a case of, he really impressed some people, you think?
No.
Or it was,
The Marlins always liked
the
him.
Marlins loved him.
And he was at every event on the showcase circuit.
And again, if you're drafting a guy in the 1st round based on BP, then your scouting at the combine, your scouting process is probably a little screwed up. Like, they loved him.
I think, see him bounce back with the strikeout here, that's good to see. It's not like people are going to look at the line score and say, oh, what's wrong with him? With Barrientos, he does a very nice job putting that on the outside corner. I think maybe conversely, if he came out and that he's a low 90s kind of guy and he comes out here and he's throwing 86, then you start worrying that there's an injury or something like that. And that could be more information that would be of value.
Although the agents are on top of this stuff too. If your guy's not at his best, he's not pitching in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not going to, if you're worried that the guy's going to be less than his best, he's not going to come out here and show that.
Got Parker Aaron stepping in here, a GCU commit. I've gotten to call some of those games to kick off the season at the Desert Invitational every year. Just an incredible environment that head coach Greg Wallace has built over at Grand Canyon University here in Phoenix. It's been such a blast. I know both of you have been around for the Desert Invitational as well. It's such a fun way to kick off the college season. And it's kind of fitting. We've kicked off the college season on MLB Network, and now we're getting towards the conclusion.
It's a full circle moment for you, Jesse.
It is in a lot of ways, yeah.
And then you'll be back in the fall. We'll have the Arizona Fall League, and we'll be doing some more.
I'll be looking
MLB
forward to the
Network
Arizona Fall League as well. Get those games on the network.com, wherever else you consume your Arizona Fall League action.
That's right.
Where else would you need to consume it but MLB.com? Barrientos pitch count running up a little bit here at 22 in the inning. We're not going to, as Jim talked about, they're not going to push these kids too far in these scenarios. It's mostly to get out here, get your work in, and turn it out. So you're looking at the score bug. It's not like he has 2 more outs to get. I think we're coming up to the end of his line here pretty quickly.
Yeah, there's no reason for anyone to get hurt in a situation like this.
It's got to be such a thrill for a lot of these kids who maybe haven't even been to a major league ballpark before to get to come out here. I think both of you can speak to this as well. That's one of my most favorite aspects, is getting to talk to kids who they step in here and they're like, their eyes just all become wide just getting to see this for the first time. Nice change up there from Barrientos, get the strikeout.
Yeah, he's bounced back very nicely. It's not like they've squared up the balls. Serrano hit the ball well the other way, but it was a walk, a ball off first base. So, if he doesn't run up against a pitch count here and he can finish the inning, great. But he should feel pretty good about how he's throwing the ball today.
No, he's been fine. I mean, the hit that knocked in the 2 runs was less than 60 miles an hour. It was a weak ground ball that hit the first base bag and popped over the first baseman, Liamzi Montañez's head. It's not like they've really knocked him around this year. You're exactly right.
Quinn Shambo, one of these really interesting guys, doing some of our prep work before this. 50 touchdowns this season as a senior at Libertyville High School out in Illinois. That'll take two-sport athlete. You know, that shows kind of that aptitude, the ability to take it. We're breaking for third here. It's in there. Be a stolen base for Rosa.
Yeah, Shambo's a defensive-minded catcher. Now, Jonathan, you saw him at the high school All-America game last year where he backpicked Eli Willits. Watch the throw here in the steal by Rosa. Deacon Pomeroy. Don't have a pop time on that, but it was on the bag. But Shambo, offensive-minded guy. I mean, I'm sorry, defensive-minded guy, advanced receiver, strong arm. I think there's some questions on the bat. Probably going to see him at Oklahoma State next year, as opposed to him getting picked high enough to sign. But very good defensive-minded catcher.
Yeah, let him go to school, add some strength, continue to see good, better pitching. Focus
on baseball probably for the first time.
Yep. So the backstop. Not going to really have a play at the plate there as Rosa's going to come across. I was interested to hear from both of you guys. You guys are locked in on draft coverage as anybody is in the country. How do you think the way NIL has kind of started to make decisions for some of these kids who maybe in the past would have leaned towards going to the professional ranks, but now they're committed to the Oklahoma States, the Wake Forests, the Vandy, etc. Shambo takes one off the shoulder.
I wonder if that's going to be the last batter he faces, but we'll see. It is. But get back to your NIL question, and just so people know, we'll be talking through the break. No commercials tonight.
No commercials.
We'll be
Too
talking
much to talk about, man.
Talk about the break, but NIL. So for your top early round guys, it's not a big. When you got bonuses or say $5 million the first round, nobody's ponying up $5 million to get. Ethan Holiday, his uncle's the coach at Oklahoma State. The Cowboys aren't going to be able to put together an NIL package to get Ethan Holiday to go to school. I think the two areas where, you have your exceptions. Tyler Bell last year, second-round pick of the Rays. They were a little bit of an impasse. Kentucky put together an attractive NIL package that made it easier for him to go to school. Ryan Prager, A&M went after him after the Angels took him third round. For the most part, the NIL is more of a factor for the guys who might be $150,000, $200,000 players, your college juniors, where they might get just as much money to go back to college, have another year on campus, get their degree. And for it's hard to sign a high school guy for that kind of money, but if you're, say, maybe a $250,000, $300,000 high school guy, colleges can go after that. So I don't think we're ever going to be at the point where it's taking the very best top players away, but for most of the guys, for the guys who are lower round picks, it can be more attractive to living the life on campus, get your degree, and go back for another year, or you know what, I don't quite love this offer, and I get an NIL deal, and then we'll see what happens in 3 years.
We're coming up next with the Stripes lineup. So let's take a look at some names here in the Stripes lineup. We got 4 DHs on this side of things, so we're really the extra DH in there. Again, for those tuning in, we're not really playing true traditional innings. This is mostly just to get some reps. Are there any names here off the jump that really stand out to any of you guys?
Yeah, Diego Velasquez is a guy who interests me. We're working on expanding our list to our top 250. I think he's going to be on there, and he's in the 2-hole here. Probably ends up at third base, but he's got some pop in the bat. I'm curious to see him swing the bat here against a decent pitcher in Joe Nottingham here. But he's the guy from my neck of the draft that kind of stands out to me.
Yeah, I mean, Eric Hines has some power. He's interesting. Connor Essenberg's a two-way guy. And you mentioned the 4 DHs, Jesse. Guys will be shifting positions throughout the game. So just because you're starting the game at DH, Dallas Brooks, who's batting 7th, is the first of the 4 DHs. He'll be playing first base next inning. So guys will be moving all around. It's true showcase style.
There's a joke in here about trying to get 4 DHs at the major league level, increase offense a little bit. But let's take a look here at Joe Nottingham, a University of Georgia commit. I think there's some exciting tools there in Nottingham. This is a big showcase for him, though, to kind of show off what he's got in front of a lot of people.
Yeah, he didn't have a great senior year. The troubles throwing strikes kind of backed up on the velo a little bit, but he's projectable. I think he's going to be able to add some strength and some more consistent velocity. He's been up to 92 miles per hour this spring, so it's in there. And maybe he needs to go on to Jim's alma mater in Georgia and sort of right the ship, and kind of guy that in a few years with some good coaching could be a guy we're talking a lot more about.
I think that's what's so interesting, right, is you guys have watched this evolution somewhat of where, you know, high school players versus college players, right? When fans see the draft happen, these college players are a lot more accessible in terms of video. They're playing on national television. They're marketed versus maybe some of these high schools. It's not always the same situation. But nowadays, I think some of these kids can use that platform that they get to go on to the collegiate level and become that. So how do you think that dynamic has changed, you know, in front offices of taking a high school kid early in a draft versus taking a college kid?
Well, I think the biggest change has probably been when you factor in the bonus pool era, which started in 2012, and you have finite bonus pools. Before the bonus pools, you know, they had a slotting system, but it was informal, and some teams kind of played along with it, and some teams didn't. But you know, the Royals were an aggressive team, the Pirates were an aggressive team, the Red Sox were an aggressive team. You could sign as many high school guys as you want. Now you just simply can't. You run out of money in your bonus pool. So I think, you know, we'll see, like we talked about. Yes, there's some late round exceptions. We mentioned Trey Gregory Alford from last year's combine was an 11th rounder, who was one of them. But for the most part, most of your high school kids who are going to get big bonuses are going to go in the top 3 rounds, maybe the 4th round, and there's a finite number of them that you can sign, because you know, once you start going over slot for guys, you have to figure out where you're getting the savings from, because if you can't go more than 5% over your pool without losing first-round picks, and nobody's going to do that.
Yeah, I know that you guys love that every year when you're trying to figure out the mocks, who's going to be doing the savings and things like that. I mean, we're in weekly mock season now, are we not? Right? You guys are going to be churning out.
Are.
Yeah.
This week we're doing it a little different on the MLB Pipeline podcast. Jim and I will be trading off picks, not who we would take if we were picking for that team, but who we think will go based on what happens before.
That is
quasi combo mock, I guess.
Yes.
That is one of my favorite things to do every year. You guys both know, is to edit your final mock draft at about 4:30 in the morning after the Futures game the night of. That is one of the favorite things that we do here at MLB Pipeline. Less than a month to go.
I'm glad you think of it in a positive light.
We appreciate you burning not just the midnight oil, but the 4 a.m. oils. So.
Diego Velasquez, a Team USA development program, 6'2", USC commit, a SoCal kid from Reseda. Guy that's been through the system a little bit here. Nice situation for him to be here on this stage here at the draft combine.
Yeah, he's an interesting player, you know, and the kind of guy who a lot of scouts do like. Like I said, there's some raw power for him to tap into. You know, I think he has a chance to be a pretty solid player. He's young. It's power over hit. He's got a plus arm. Probably plays third when all is said and done, but has the power to profile at the hot corner.
I think that's so interesting through the years, and you guys can speak to this, of so many of these guys, they play shortstop on their high school team because they're the best athlete in the school, right, or in their area. So, you know, when fans see, oh man, we took another shortstop, right? That guys aren't always going to go into pro ball. You know, the international work that I've done over the last year, you start to see that, you know, a team will sign 4 shortstops from the Dominican or Venezuela, and it's like, you've only got one guy who can play shortstop. Like, you need to be able to kind of move that glove around.
Right, and I think there are a few things that come play, and, you know, maybe we'll, when we bring Danny Haas from the Washington Nationals in with us after this half inning, we can sort of ask him about that. One, things have a way of working this out. Guys show that they can't play shortstop. You'll see us writing reports, or we'll talk about guys who you send him out as a shortstop and leave him there until he plays himself off, or if there's a better option. And that, it often just sort of presents, you know, manifests what needs to happen. Some guys flame out and don't make it. Some guys move from another position and end up being shortstops. You know, that's rare, but that happens. But by and large, you know, if there's a guy who plays a decent shortstop in high school, why wouldn't you take that athlete who shows that he can do a lot of things up the middle? Because you can probably transfer that to almost any place else on the diamond.
Nice breaker there from Nottingham. Didn't get him to chase. We're, of course, not going to be going through true outs here. He's almost about that halfway point in the frame. Stripes lineup. 12 batters in there. They're all going to be rotating through the 7-inning game that we've got coming for you here tonight from the MLB Draft Combine. A lot of action today, Jim. I know you were talking all day long. You're trying to get your breath. Velasquez lines one out to left. It's going to be tracked down out there. Jim, were there, I know you're on the air for a long time today, but were there guys that you kind of were excited to see in person? I know you can only watch so much film over the course of a couple months. Were there some guys you were really excited to get to see up close in person?
Yeah, two of the guys, they weren't necessarily, I mean, they both perform well, but it wasn't necessarily they had the most exciting, data and exit velocity, that type of thing. But like JoJo Parker was the best prospect we were going to see, who actually took the field, number 10 on the MLB Pipeline draft top 200. And he was what I thought he was. It was good seeing him in person. Like you said, we can watch these guys on video and all that, but it's different seeing him in person. And yeah, you could see he moved well in the box. I like the swing. You could see why people think he's going to hit for average and power. He's not going to probably stay at shortstop because he's kind of big, but he moved well at short. So you could say, like, yeah, this guy's a chance to be a pretty good third baseman. And then I'd heard a lot about C.J. Gray, who's a high school pitcher from North Carolina, who's more lower on the top 200 because there's a kind of a big gap between his ceiling and his floor. But he was probably the most athletic pitcher we saw today. He's a quarterback also, explodes down the mound. Type of guy you could look at and say that guy could throw 100 someday. Interestingly, has more feel for a changeup than he does for spinning the ball. But he was exciting to see. Those were probably the two guys I was most interested in seeing on the field based on what I knew about them coming in. How about you, Jonathan? Who are you looking forward to seeing today?
Oof. Gonna turn that there. That's a nice snag out at second base from Rashad Hayes. Stars team, they got their 3 outs. We're going on to a second inning.
Take a look here. Hit on the button. Nice inning from Nottingham there. Did a better job, I think, locating the fastball than he did the breaking stuff. But
I think it's time for a guest, guys. I mean, I don't know if you're tired of hearing my voice, but I think it's time we bring in Danny Haas, the Nationals Vice President of Amateur Scouting, because we want to see how many people we can possibly pack into this booth up here.
There we go.
We appreciate the Diamondbacks for loaning out their booth. Danny Haas is here. Mr. Haas, welcome into the booth.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
so why don't we just get to it, Danny, and tell us who you're taking number 1. We'll just get that out of the way.
All right. Wish I could share with you. We're not quite there yet.
You wouldn't share it with us even if you were.
Probably not.
That's all right.
But yeah, I don't think anything like major surprises. I think we're discussing the same 7-8 guys at the top 7-8 picks.
No, that's fair. I'm mostly joking. We have to get that question.
I made the same joke before we were on the air.
See?
There's still, I've lost track of what date it is. I think about 4 weeks until the draft at this point.
We're a little under a month. I'm choosing to go about months. So
Okay,
yeah.
that's fine. Yeah, we're in the final month, so we're finally coming down the home stretch. Just tell the people who are watching this game, listening to us. Obviously, there's not a lot of on-field stuff that's going on after the combine, but like, how will the Nationals spend the final month narrowing it down from 7 or 8 guys to make that decision who goes number 1?
I feel like the raw evaluation period's almost complete. We're still going to the draft league and the cake and so forth in this event, obviously. But we're still a lot of time left to crunch through some analytical stuff, some medical stuff, and just getting on the same page and trying to get to a consensus on what we feel is best fit.
And this is a year where there isn't Steven Strasburg, or Paul Skeens even.
Right.
And even that year, you can make the argument that there were some other guys you could consider taking. So I would imagine that you're already having some very healthy, spirited conversations.
Yes, it's been on for the whole spring. We don't have, like you said, the Strasburgers, the Harpers, that Riz and Reed Dunn experienced with the Nationals, and then Adley Rutschman with Brad with the Orioles. But it's generational talent, obvious guy. We're not there, but a pretty deep pool. Good options. No perfect ones, but a lot of positives. So we're just going to take our best shot.
When you come out to events like this, right, you get to see so many of these kids up close.
Number 1,
What are some of the things that you can look for by having all these guys in kind of this little echo chamber that we've created?
I mean, on the field right now, most of my work today in this event is going to be in our suite in interviews and getting to know the kids better. Seeing guys in street clothes is different than you see them in uniforms and getting on top of like normal people kind of thing. and then actually having the players ask us questions too, and just they're determining if we're the best fit as well.
You know, one of the things that Jim and I often say is that probably the best win-win, obviously the medicals is a big part of it, but the interview, I keep calling it sort of speed dating because they can go and talk to as many teams as possible. But it's not often that someone like you in your chair, or Brad, scouting director, you're not going to do home visits, like in the same way that an area guy is going to do. So this is an opportunity for you face-to-face to really ask some of those questions and dig in. How much difference can that make? I'm not talking about 1-1, just in the general, like round 5, where you're like, oh, we're this guy, that guy really impressed us in the suite during the combine.
Hopefully by now, we're going to be just under 50 interviews, I think, by the end of this thing. And the good part is that we have Zoomed most of these guys. Right. So it's just getting reacquainted, asking them, how their years went. We asked them goals they wanted to accomplish over the spring. Did you accomplish that? If you did, great. If not, why? And just a good give and take, back and forth.
How much do you get into, because I've talked to some teams that try to get into as much as you can in that tight of a setting, like hitting philosophies, pitching philosophies, to get a feel for how a guy's training, how he approaches his craft. How much can you learn about a player in those aspects?
That does start during those winter Zoom calls that we talked about, and getting into their heads, how they see the game, how they see themselves, and if that changed in the course of the spring. And it's very impressive, like these young men these days, that they're very worldly. They have in-depth thought processes.
We've noticed that the more and more we've done this, the polish.
Yes.
Just in terms of handling media stuff. I mean,
yes.
Hopefully Jim and I aren't too scary.
I mean, comparing myself to one of the players today, I was putting myself back in that 18-year-old shoes, is like I'd be scared to death, and they're not. They can think on the fly.
Put together, right? So it's really interesting. And you say that you like to hear them ask questions. Can you talk a little bit about, in a general sense, just what are some of the questions you've heard from players that make you sort of sit up and go, wow, that's a really good question to.
Almost universally, they pay attention to draft trends, like where I've been, where Brad's been, where Reed's been. Why did you guys take these players? How do you see me? How am I fit for your organization? You guys took these players last year. How can I fit into that group? And where's my path? And how can I get better? Those are a lot of the common questions that we get.
We were talking a little bit earlier about how this is such a good scenario for some guys who might be a little unheralded to kind of put their name out on a map. How much do you kind of put stock into, like, all right, we thought this kid was pretty good, and now we're seeing him up close physically. How much do you put stock into these couple of days here?
This is a huge event. It's very beneficial for all involved. There is unfortunately a lot of guesswork in our jobs, and just the more familiar we can get with everybody involved, the more comfortable we're going to be.
I want to sort of go back, because I think the first time you and I spoke was the winter meetings when you guys won the lottery. And I think we were sort of joking about, how quickly you go from celebrating that second to, all right, let's get to work on it. How quickly do you flip that switch as a scouting department to start, all right, well, who are we looking at here?
Well, there's definitely like shock in terms of the odds of hitting on 1-1. Like that lasted all night. Like, wow, we actually, watching it unfold. But we had already done work at that point by thinking that we might pick 10. We might pick 4, like scenarios of who fits in those ranges, hypothetically, moving forward. So I didn't change too terribly much, because we'd already kind of prepped it out and ranked it out. But it was exciting to have the choice of anybody we wanted.
How much of that, I don't know if pain's the right word, but what was the draft lottery like the year before, when you guys were ineligible to pick before 10, and then you find out after the fact, hey, you guys won the number 1 pick. Okay, they had to redo it.
Right.
And then you won the number 2 pick, and they had to redo it. So, how much was it nice to be able to actually keep the pick this time around?
Right. It like last year was kind of like, we're going to pick 10 or 11, pretty much, right? So it didn't pay a ton of attention to it. And then Reed went in and won it twice. So we're like, can we send him back this year? And he was not our representative, but seeing it again unfold where we picked 1 again, it was unbelievable.
The draft lottery gods were smiling on you that you actually got the 1-1 and got to keep it this time.
No doubt.
When, obviously, you've been having meetings all along and things like that, but when do you officially enter the draft war room?
So we had our area scout meetings last week and got them given their voice, turned down their list, any new information, any changes of opinion or gut or that sort of thing. We'll go in informally between Team USA coverage, limited Cape coverage. We'll pop in before the 4th of July and then head in around the 6th for formal beginning.
To follow up on that, I mean, we're used to it now because I guess this is year 5 of the July draft, but how strange is it to be scouting?
Nope.
Well, I was going to talk about that part, but you're scouting 2026 players before you pick the 2025 players.
We're still trying to get the 25s right, and then we're having to focus on 26. We're real about that. We try to take a real 30,000-foot view of that and continue to be focused on this year.
If I'm a Nationals fan, right, and obviously they're very excited about July, who they're going to add to the organization, how do you kind of balance the team's short-term, like, let's win in 2026 versus this is the player I think could help us, maybe not necessarily in 2026, but trust us, we have a long-term plan. How do you kind of balance those two elements?
I mean, you're obviously you're always chasing the balance of impact and probability. Best player available is the phrase we use a lot. Not drafting for need. Definitely using tiebreakers and trying to make the best decision, the best bet that you can make.
So how does, with that in mind, how does, like, the way, explain to a fan who maybe isn't super locked in on how the draft pool works with your money that you can allocate to some picks, like, how does that, well, we've heard teams sometimes they like 2 guys equally, but one guy's willing to take a little bit less money. How do you kind of weigh all those things out?
We definitely don't focus on where can we find the biggest savings. I think that's kind of a trap. It's exciting to be able to utilize the draft pool to acquire depth in the draft. Depth in the draft is very important. Throughout a lot of our careers, a lot of the better picks we made is deeper in the draft. So, but yeah, just trying to get the best player available.
And yeah, the nice thing is you have the #1 pick. The slot's a little over $11 million. I'm going to go out on a limb. I know you don't know who you're picking yet. The guy's not getting $11 million.
They will not get $11 million.
I'm going to guess it's going to probably be closer to, probably begin with a 9. We'll see. I won't spend the money for it.
We don't want to get too far.
But my point is, you could take the best available player, whoever you think that is, and you're still going to save close to $1.75, $2 million to spend on the rest of your draft.
We'll see how it goes.
Well said, well said.
Danny, thanks for joining us. Best of luck to you in July, and enjoy the rest of your time here in Arizona.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
Anything, Holly?
We're gonna keep the guests rolling here. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
This is celebrity hour we've got going on here.
That's right.
We are joined next by Rick Eckstein, managing the U18 Team USA club here at the Baseball World Cup coming up this fall. Rick, welcome to the booth.
Thank you for having me, guys. It's
thanks for joining.
first time in the booth.
Ever?
Ever.
Wow.
On the field stuff I've done, but never in the
I've definitely
booth.
talked to you with a headset on before, so that's new. You want me to get a little further away so it's like you're looking up and down?
No, this is great.
From your vantage, let's start with USA Baseball's involvement in this event, and sort of take us through the cooperation of Major League Baseball and USA Baseball with different partners that help put this together.
Yeah, the partnership that USA Baseball and Major League Baseball have is a hand-in-hand partnership, and they work very closely together to not only run and organize the event in a way that is just amazing, but USA Baseball has all the connections across in all the cities to have workers and helpers and people to come together to actually execute the events. And Major League Baseball has a great pulse on bringing the people around that create excitement. And so you have the ex-Major League players, you have people from the commissioner's office that come in, and it just makes the event special.
Some of those kids that have come up through the Team USA program, right, have gone on to big league careers, the Bobby Witts, the guys like that. How do they come, when they come back to Team USA, what do you hear from them in terms of that camaraderie and how much they enjoyed their time, their experience with the program?
The most common phrase that I've heard is it's the best experience of their careers. Anytime that you can get yourself aligned with the best in the game, and all collectively on one team, fighting for USA, especially if you leave the country and go international. I mean, it's just it's a feeling that I wish everyone could have. It changes you. It really makes you look at the game in a different way when you're fighting for something bigger than yourself. Playing for gold, or in the Olympics or a World Cup. Any of those events are truly special events that really change you and shape your mind, and it's pretty cool.
That's definitely true. I covered 2 Olympics. I got to cover the 92 Olympics and the 96 Olympics, and that was a repeated theme among players. And I think when people think of USA Baseball, the Olympic team, the World Baseball Classic team, now we have big leaguers involved. Those are like the main teams people think about. But like talking about the selection, there's not just a college team. There's an 18 and under team. There's a 15 and under team. There's a 12 and under team. How early does USA Baseball start looking at players? Are we talking about 10-year-olds are kind of on the radar that we're going to want that kid in a couple of years?
Sure, there are events that are out there that kids are being targeted, and you follow. You watch and you follow, and then once they get to that 12U age, that's the first national team through the USA Baseball programming. And so they put dynamite players and teams together, and it's a pipeline that once you're in USA Baseball's pipeline and they keep track of you, and you come back for different events and development programming, it's a wonderful program that it helps align you and your goals with the right people to teach you how to grow. And it's a phenomenal program. And a couple of years ago, after I had finished in the big leagues, I called Paul Seiler and just said, can I get involved back? I started back in 2005, 6, 7, and 8. And then when I got to the big leagues, I had to forfeit my position because of the time commitment with the major leagues. And then so when I was able to get back and call Paul Seiler, I said, I'll do anything. So I started with the 16-year-old program, and then the 17s and the 18s, and just started learning the kids again and learning the age group and reconnecting. And it's been fun watching these kids age up year after year. And it's a great development program. It definitely puts all the kids into the spotlight of the scouts and all the organizations. And it's been a wonderful platform for many guys to express their talent and grow.
First of all, telling Paul Seiler you do anything is dangerous. Like, he might be pulling tarp. You got to be careful. But you're sort of talking, watching guys age up, and it must be fascinating from your vantage point, seeing guys, because it can go in either direction. When you have players that young, you don't know how they're going to mature. Just like some high school kids need to go to college and they blossom into something you don't imagine. I imagine you've probably seen guys who show up and are like, maybe didn't make a 16U team, and you're like, man, he took off. He's advanced his game. And then some guys are like, that guy's going to be like a first rounder who, and I'm not asking you to name specific names, but like, how interesting is it to see how these young players evolve? Because that age, you just don't know how they're even just going to physically grow and develop, let alone the sort of mental side of things.
You hit the nail on the head. I don't think anybody really knows truly long term. What you try to do is you try to give the kids what you think they need to help them grow. And over time, over the years, you watch them work through the development programming. And, some kids really blossom early, an early blossomer, and they're outshining their competition at that age. And then a couple of years later, a different group kind of emerges and is caught up and maybe has taken those steps past the other guys, right? So it's interesting, because the longer you're in it, the more you realize you don't know the crystal ball. You're guessing, and you're trying to figure out how to give the kids your best through all the experiences that you've had on a field, and really trying to help them focus in ways that's going to allow them to develop to get to that next rung on the ladder, if you will, and then continue to blossom.
You've seen these guys all over. Kids come from all over the country to come play for Team USA, right? And you've seen them in their high school circuits or on the travel circuit, wherever they're at. When they gel together for you and what you're going to be looking forward to this fall in Japan, like that whole experience for everybody to come together playing for Team USA, like what is that experience like when everyone's on one team finally, making an all-star team out of high school kids, really?
It's very challenging. The amateur game right now is is wonderful. The kids are so physical. They're so talented. But the mental side of the game and playing the game a certain way, especially when you leave the country and you're playing teams that play a very disciplined, scrappy type of baseball, a small ball, if you will, where you have to have bunt plays in place, you have to have pickoff plays in place, you have to have double cuts in place, you have to have rundowns in place. You got to have all the little nuances of the game in place if you're going to beat Japan, if you're going to beat Chinese Taipei. And so what I try to do, what I started last year, is I put certain plays up. I want guys to understand certain plays. I want them to see it. I think there's 3 ways to learn. You got to see it, you got to hear it, and you got to talk it. So I mean, it's like there's all different ways that messaging gets into the club, but it all is focused on the concept of 1 equals 1. O-N-E equals W-O-N, is getting the guys to want to funnel into a group that really come together and gel. And over the trials, process, you do different things to try to discover who wants to be a part of it and who finds themselves kind of, alienating themselves in ways to feel like, I'm good, I want to do this. And that's what really, what I try to tell everybody is, like, baseball people know how to read a book just like everybody else. But the one thing they know how to do better than most is read between the lines. And that's what the years of experience really try to teach you, is how to read between the lines in ways that, reveal what you're looking for.
And when you're putting together these teams, it's not just, hey, we're getting the 18 best players and just jamming them together, because you have to get guys to play role. Like we were talking earlier about how a lot of the best players play shortstop. Well, only one guy's your shortstop. You have to find a guy who's willing to maybe to play second or play third. Or, hey, all the pitchers, I assume, that usually taking these teams are used to starting all the big games for their teams. But you know what? There's one guy we're lining up to pitch the gold medal game. There's one guy we're lining up to pitch the semifinal game. And 4 or 5 of you guys might have to pitch in relief. And, like, you know what? We might have some guys who you might be the third catcher and you're going to mainly catch bullpens because we have 2 other guys. I mean, just talk about how there's that factors too. It's not just, hey, we're just rolling the bats and balls out for the best players. We have to find guys who can fit and fill and are willing to play different roles than maybe they're used to.
Absolutely. It's a 20-man roster. When you leave the country, if someone gets hurt, you're at 19. There's no replacing that injured player. If someone wakes up sick, you're at 18 now. And so it's very challenging. So when you're doing the roster, my first talk to the team is, I hope everybody in the room considers yourself a ball player. You're not a pitcher, you're not a shortstop, you're not a center fielder, you're a ball player. Because it's going to take ball players to win. And if you've set your target so narrow that this is my role, this is who I think I am, well, we'll put you in that bucket. But there's going to be other people that are considered in that bucket, but their reach can go into other buckets as well. So those roles have to be filled. So last year, our team consisted of, our bench players had to be pitchers as well. So you had to be a 2-way, the way the roster was constructed. And so every decision you make has a trickle-down decision. Right? So if you go with a left-handed hitting shortstop, where's the right-handed balance? If you're going right, so all those decisions, and it's very fascinating. It was my first time ever really doing it to that level, and daily those decisions are being manipulated to fill the roles, as you're saying, Jim, to really put together not only what you vision as this is our team, but what happens if.
Right.
So those are big. I'm glad you brought that up, Jim, because from our end, and we're always so draft focused, and so every summer, and there's some version was PDP League was Tournament of Stars, whatever you want to call it, but the sort of identification, whittling down the roster, there would be guys who don't make that 18U roster, who if we were just doing a draft ranking, and we will hear from, well, how come this guy didn't make Team USA? I think I remember the first time hearing was Alex Kirilloff didn't make the 18U team. No one thought he couldn't. Everyone knew he could hit, right? But it wasn't a fit for what the team needed that year. And then sometimes it's this guy can catch and play left field, so he may have an edge over the guy who might be a slightly better catcher, right? So it's you have to be reminded that you're trying to put together a team with that specific focus in mind. And international competition is way different. And with that, I want to ask you a question in terms of how did you have to recalibrate, because of all your time on the pro side, it's a whole different animal. Like, did you have to kind of learn a different way of even evaluating the players to decide who to put on that team?
You do. You know, the blessing that I have been given was, you know, starting in 2005. Davey Johnson was our manager in Holland, and that was my first exposure to international baseball with Team USA. So I did 05, I did 06 in Cuba, I did 07 in Taiwan, I did 08 in the Beijing Olympics. And so through that you know, process, you know, I also did the WBC in 06. So all those conversations with high-level people that were, you know, teaching me ways of thinking about roster construction and roster considerations. And then, you know, I made my big league run, so I came back, and then Michael Kadire was leading the team 2 years ago, and I was a part of his training staff, so I got to be a part of his conversations, and it really allowed me to start thinking along the ways of what does it take at the 18U national level. And, you know, Brett Curl and Ashley Bratcher are great because they've been in it a long time, and so they share what value each role and what is necessary to win, and so they give you all these little nuggets that you have to put into the basket of consideration when you're selecting each individual person for the roster and the team. And so it's a convoluted web, and it takes you in all kinds of directions. We put together a great training staff of 16 coaches and 2 pitching coordinators, and then we have the regular staff of the 18U national team, and we all have very high-level conversations. And I tell them, poke holes in what I'm asking, poke holes in it. You know, show me my weak spots, show me what I'm missing. You know, show me the vantage point that I'm not considering. And so those are the conversations on a nightly basis.
So maybe to change topic a little bit on this, can you put your scout hat on for us, for some of the kids that maybe in future years will be here? What are scouts looking for at this event, whether it's on field, off the field, for some of the participants here at the Draft Combine?
Well, you know, the physicality, what can they do? What tools are they showing is an obvious one. I think at this event, what makes this special is that it gives the teams a chance to have an up-close and personal one-on-one and really get to learn the player to a whole new level. They're having interviews being done throughout the entire week. They're doing assessments on the field with their physical capabilities, whether it's the vertical jump or the 10-yard split, or, you know, all of the reaction time things. And so it just allows them a deeper level of research and comfort level. If they're going to take them, you know, high and invest all this money, they really want to dig down on those levels. So I think that's very interesting. But from the physical side, they're just getting, you know, one last look in the environment when they're all together. They're all the same, so it's a little bit easier process for them, and you know, it's just a phenomenal event.
With this event specifically, how busy are you? Like, how many days are you here, and how many hours are you working per day?
I'm working 2 straight days. I do all the on-field stuff with the batting practice and coordinating the times with the network so they can, you know, have their interviews. But so the days are long. They're great days. I'm very impressed with Arizona and, you know, the new turf that they've had for a few years now. There hasn't been a moment that someone hasn't been on the field running around doing something from starting at 8 o'clock this morning. So, you know, it's a great event. These kids are getting, you know, a full look to everything that they can do, and you can pick and choose what you want to do. You can pick and choose everything about what you would like to be a part of. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity for these guys.
Rick, we thank you so much for coming into the booth. I mean, you're a natural. There's no way it's your first time. There's no way.
Join us anytime. Come back in the 5th inning if you want.
Well, you guys make me feel so comfortable. I feel
good. We're just having a conversation up here. So
that's right.
Thank you so much. I know you've got, you know, soon in July, right, is when you start to bring everybody to Cary, and if you haven't experienced Cary, North Carolina in July, by the way, you should go. Just bring a lot of sunscreen. And good luck with the process, because I know it's a tough one. You get a lot of good players, and you can only take 20 with you. So enjoy it.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. If you're ever around, you're always welcome. So
love it down there. We'll try to get down again as soon as I can.
Great.
All right,
well, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Rick. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
We thank Rick Eckstein for joining us there in the booth. Looking forward to later this fall. Team USA 18 under, going for the gold.
In our slew of interviews, I want to point out we weren't keeping up with the game action. I know, Jesse, you want to burnish your play-by-play skills, so we got plenty of innings left. But Parker Rhodes was pretty impressive there.
Yeah, he was.
In the second inning, he was throwing 94, 96, mid-80s slider, walked the first batter, then struck out the next three. So that was pretty impressive pitching performance from Mr. Parker Rhodes.
I guess we don't have challenges in this game. There's a lot that was up in the air. What are we going to have? I think Bruin Agbayani has a case. I think his hand was in there on third.
It may have been.
May have been in there.
Well, he's trying to do something. He's walked twice, right? So he's like, I better steal some bags.
He wants the reintroduction of that rule from 2021 where you walk, they put the runner
So he
on,
could
but you actually get to have another at-bat.
We're having fun here at the 2025 MLB Draft Combine High School Showcase game. Rip down the right field line. That's going foul. Got to get a little play-by-play in.
Well,
I'm Jesse Borick, joined here by Jim Callis and Jonathan Mayo in the booth. MLB Pipeline bringing you coverage, both the MLB Pipeline social, you got MLB Draft social, you got a little minor league baseball social. We got everything's covered here at the MLB Draft Combine. We've been here since 9 a.m. Jim Callis has been on the air for like 10 hours today. Guy's having a blast.
He wanted them to play a doubleheader.
I've sat through doubleheaders or multiple games. So
Jim was here
any
when this was a
suggestions.
13-inning game back in the day. We're only slated to play 7 here. Tapper. Nice play by Moody, get off the mound there.
Moody is pretty athletic. He was a fairly decent quarterback recruit. Had some back issues. I think a stress fracture in his back. He's lifting weights. They kind of curtailed his senior season a little bit, which is why I think he's here trying to show people what he can do. He's so projectable. He's 6'7", 210. He's working about 89, 92. I think there's more velocity in there. The arm works pretty well. He's
Good sink.
Yeah, touched 96 in the past. I think his best days are ahead of him. I don't know that he's necessarily going to go high enough to divert him away from pitching in Arkansas, but we've seen some Arkansas pitchers perform very well at the College World Series.
I was going to say, has anybody pitched well from Arkansas lately? Has anybody heard anything?
What a
from any of
segue.
these? Yeah, anybody pitched well? Gage Wood, maybe, a 9-inning no-hitter with 19 strikeouts?
It's always fun being at a baseball event when something like that happens in the world of baseball, because as exciting as this is, a lot of people were talking about the Gage Wood's no-hitter.
I remember it like it was yesterday. We were sitting up at the restaurant here at Chase Field. We were doing some of our work, and I got to sit next to. Highly recommend for anybody out there, sit next to Jim Callis during the College World Series whenever you can. We got to watch Jack Caglione playing for the Florida Gators, and now a year later, there he is up in the major leagues, just absolutely tore through minor league baseball. One of the most exciting prospect shooting stars that we've had over a 365-day period. And I think that's part of what makes this so fun too, is that a lot of these guys not everybody's always participating in the on-field activities, but there's a lot of the times these guys that you're going to see very quickly in the minor leagues are here at the Draft Combine.
No, absolutely. I think each of us have talked to Jamie Arnold at least 4 times in the last couple of months, but the Florida State ace is here doing interviews and talking to a bunch of teams, and he's a guy that I think a lot of people would agree. You have to look at the college hitter first, which college arm could quickly. Pretty advanced. Right? I think he has advanced. Relatively, depending on the organization. That's the first step. Someone who's here at the combine, taking advantage of the meeting with the aspect of it in particular, who probably we're going to hear his name called in the top 10 picks for sure, and see him being the kind of guy, Jim, who starts his first full season in Double-A and then move as quickly as the results dictate.
Liam Doyle's another college pitcher who kind of fits that bill who's here. Kyson Witherspoon's the guy who could move pretty quickly. I think Tyler Bremner's here as well. He could move pretty quickly. Yeah, I think we will see that.
That's something I want to get back to in a minute, guys. But first, I think we're going to take a look here at Parker Road. It's a pretty nice second inning. A lot of that was while we were joined here in the booth. Able to elevate that fastball at the top of the zone, kind of get some of that carry, that nice breaking stuff from Rhodes. I mean, I'll give him a 10 out of 10, too, for that glove work. That's a pretty slick-looking glove.
Yeah, he was very, very sharp. Filled up the zone for the most part. And that's some good ride there, Jim. He's an interesting guy.
No, he is. I mean, he's shown that stuff all spring in Indiana. He pitches at Greenfield Central High School. He has not thrown strikes at. He did walk the first batter he faced today too, and then he locked in. But guys have noted, it's a big league quality arm. It's a pro quality arm, but there just hasn't been a lot of consistent strike thrown. He's not the biggest guy in the world either, 6'1", 180. So he's not. I don't know that there's as much projection as certainly not as much as McLean Moody, who we just saw. It'll be interesting. He's committed to Mississippi State. The stuff's there. Where does he fit? How much better can he get if he goes to college and develop? The high school pitchers are the toughest guys to sign.
So I think that's something that's really interesting that maybe some people would want to hear about is how do you guys look at pitchers in particular, right? Like we saw Paul Skeens wasn't a huge prospect when he was coming out of high school. Obviously went to the Air Force Academy first, kind of showed off his stuff, wound up transferring to LSU. The rest is history, so they say. How do you guys feel like now these kids that are coming out of college, man, like they're grown men in a lot of ways, and they're maybe able to move through systems. You mentioned Jamie Arnold, maybe potentially starting in AA, depending on where he lands in the draft. How have you seen that evolution of college pitchers kind of change how quickly they're able to acclimate to the program?
I do think that there is an expectation for most college pitchers to move more quickly, or at least handle an advanced assignment right out of the shoot for their first full season. You're not going to see them pitch, this summer, the college guys, because the long seasons, especially the guys who, pitched in postseason. So I do think that, especially when we're talking first rounders, maybe second rounders even, there are certain guys that you just think, oh, this guy has a chance to move fast. It doesn't always work out that way, but and just look, Chase Dollender's in the big leagues. Chase Burns from, is now in AAA. So there are more. I'm only going to name guys named Chase, evidently, but those are the two that sort of popped in my mind. Who you think, oh, they may move relatively fast, and here they are, sort of living up to that advanced billing. So I do think that there is the hope that those guys can get there sooner rather than later.
I'm going to go old man callous here. The college pitchers, I feel like the best guys have always moved quickly. My first College World Series, I saw Ben McDonald, Kirk Dressendorfer, Alex Fernandez. All those guys were in the big leagues almost immediately. I think the thing that's changed the most for me over my many, many years in the game, as you guys like to remind me.
You need a couple more minis.
Is you now have a lot of schools have resources that were unimaginable. Like schools have pitching labs too. It's not just Wake Forest. Dallas Baptist had one of the earliest ones, and they've had guys been helping guys maximize pitchers. So I think you get guys.
That is crushed by Nathan Eisfelder.
That's out.
That's out of here. 407 feet at 99.5 miles an hour off the bat from Eisfelder. Took that hanging breaking ball and said, Jim Callis, you're going to have to wait to finish your story. He's going to have to jog around the bases first.
That was impressive. You don't see too many home runs with wood bats in the big league ballpark in game action for high school kids. Now, we do not have – I cannot tell you how many guys have hit home runs in these games, but he just waited on that curveball.
That's the old cement mixer. That's you hang him, we bang him from Nathan Eisfelder.
Oh, and that's, he's an IMG Academy player, a baseball academy down in Florida. They get a lot of good players, and it's a strength-based swing. Power is his calling card, and he provided his calling card right there.
Wait, I was just finish my point. I mean, it's not like you have to wait and get into pro ball to be exposed to pitch labs. You're getting that at a lot of the top college programs. If you're a top college program and you don't have a pitching lab, you're behind the times.
So do you think that maybe that changes for a high school kid? Let's talk about Caleb Rogers on the mound right here. Texas commit Caleb Rogers, MLB Breakthrough Series participant. You know, he's committed to Texas. Do you think maybe when you're going through this process, obviously it's individualized to where each player thinks it's best for him, but are kids in general maybe more reticent to go to the program because, like, hey man, I can go to college and they're going to hook me up with a pitching lab and I'm going to get ready. Maybe by the time I'm draft eligible in a couple of years, I'm a totally different pitcher.
Yeah, especially as a pitcher, I think you can grow so much physically, and just as a pitcher, a lot can change. And if you feel like, hey, I'm going to a top program and I'm going to have a lot of the same resources I'm going to have in pro ball. Now look, it's different because in pro ball, you're pro pitcher 365 days a year. You don't have to worry about going to class. You're just focusing on getting better as a pitcher. So I still think you're going to develop better and get more instruction in pro ball. But I do think a lot of top college programs have very good teaching, very good resources. And you think of Wake's pitching lab, you think not just Chase, but Rhett Lauder was almost immediately in the big leagues. And he grew a lot while he was there. And it just gives you the opportunity to advance very quickly.
Well, I think there are a few variables that come into play when we're kind of talking about the development, not just pitchers, but particularly pitchers. And the pitching lab is definitely one of them. And we talked a little bit with Rick Eckstein in terms of physical and emotional growth. That, 18 to 19 to 20, that's like huge amounts of growth that happen just by itself without anybody doing anything. Then add in the pitching lab. The strength and conditioning programs are vastly improved in the college game compared to years ago when Jim started covering baseball, and the
19th century. I
think to your point, Jesse, about the grown men, all of those things add into much more finished products and physical specimens because of that.
What I think is interesting is we live in the social media age, right, where overseeing MLB Pipeline and minor league baseball social, everybody's favorite phrase is to call them up, right? Like once you're in pro ball, do you feel like once some of these guys get into pro ball, there's a bit of, in this hyper active society we have now in 2025, do you think organizations also are like, all right, we took this kid when he was 18 years old and he hasn't really moved in 3 or 4 years. Has that aspect changed as well, or are teams willing to be a little bit more patient with some long-term projects?
Well, you can't be. It's tougher with the reduced rosters.
Yeah,
there's roster limits.
The roster spaces that you have, I think the lack of the half-step rookie leagues to let those guys maybe move a little more incrementally puts a little more pressure on players to figure it out. Certain guys you're going to give, longer leash to and let them figure it out. There's a nice four-seamer up in the zone there for Rogers.
Yeah, Rogers just looked really good, really explosive. That fastball looks like it's really popping the mid. 94 sitting up at the top of the zone.
But so you do need them to produce maybe sooner than you used to have to. But listen, you see all the time guys, late bloomers, whether they figure it out, when they go to pro ball and it takes them 6 years and not happening quite as often as it used to, but it does happen.
It's tough. I mean, they used to talk about, back in the day, you refer to guys as a 2-year rookie ball guy. You can't really have a 2-year rookie ball guy anymore. You don't have that kind of time to wait. I think the roster limits are 165 on domestic rosters right now, and that's counting hurt guys unless they're on the 60-day injured list.
That's ripped into left field from Caden Elam. Going to get another run on the board here for the Stripes. Ball's tagged 104 miles an hour off the bat from Elam.
Yeah, he's a guy. He had a broken hamate this year. He's known. I mean, he's got some athleticism. You can see the strength there, the quick bat to produce that kind of 104 mile an hour exit velocity. All-state quarterback as well. We talk about the shortstops. I haven't counted. We have many quarterbacks playing this game and many other quarterbacks attending the combine as well. He's committed to Louisville. staying in state to go play for Louisville. Projects as a power hitting third baseman. He's a guy where the combine's more important than for most kids because he didn't get a chance to play part of his senior season. He wasn't at full strength when he did come back initially. So, again, it's only one game. He's probably going to get 2 at-bats, but it's a chance to get to see him against better competition and just see him in game action where you didn't really have that opportunity until late in the spring.
I think what's so interesting is for some of these kids that come out to this event, right? And you mentioned Louisville, big win today, College World Series, keeping their Omaha dreams alive. For as talented as a lot of these kids are coming out of high school, sometimes the puzzle pieces with the way the transfer portal is now, where you don't know who's going to be on the team. You might be the only third baseman or the only catcher that it looked like was going to be in that class, and then all of a sudden somebody from another school is going to transfer over. That can kind of complicate things. So a kid like Elam, maybe you have a really impressive performance at the combine. I think that can maybe change. Like the transfer portal is a different beast than it was a couple of years ago at the college level. How do you think kids have kind of had to, navigate those waters, so to speak?
I don't feel like they've missed. I think most kids feel like they're going to be the exception to the rule and they're going to play as freshmen. We got a fly ball. I think, it's going to stay in the park. Just track down there for the third.
Play-by-play, Jim Callis.
I know.
You swore you would not do play-by-play.
Well, I
love
lied.
to hear it.
I lied.
You love to hear it.
But what I was going to say is when you're a freshman, it's tough now because especially in the SEC, the ACC, the top conferences where there's a lot of pressure to win as well, coaches are bringing in 22, 23-year-old transfers to play. And I think kids, you want them to believe in themselves, and they always believe, okay, I'll be the exception. I'm going to play as a freshman. The reality is a lot of these top programs, they don't play as freshmen. And then you're stuck like, okay, I didn't play much as a freshman. Do I transfer or do I stick it out?
I do wonder, and not talking about, the vast majority of the players we're watching here today are all at these sort of bigger schools, power programs, whatever. Would high school players be more willing to go to a mid-major knowing that the big schools are putting so much attention to the transfer portal, and almost that they're recruiting more from that than they are at a high school? So you don't have to worry, all right, I didn't get recruited by LSU. I could go to school X, and if I do well there, I'm going to have a chance to step up into one of those schools if I really want to.
Well, I think the mid-majors are definitely recruiting. That's the mid-major sales pitch. Jesse Bork, I want you to come play for me. Instead of going to LSU where you're not necessarily going to play as a freshman, come play here for a year or two, and then we'll let you transfer. Well, you love Grand Canyon, so we'll let you transfer to Grand Canyon. But I think that's
my marketing pitch for Grand Canyon. Yeah, there you go.
That's the mid-major recruiting pitch. I do think the big powers still want the top recruits. Like Tennessee has a great recruiting class, LSU has a great recruiting class, and so on. And it's going to be tough. I don't think they're good. I think the top programs are still going to recruit both, and then they're going to let the players shake out who plays, and then they'll just go on to the next group.
Yeah, you said Tennessee. Through this whole break, I couldn't stop thinking about Nathan Eisfelder's home run. So I think we're gonna get the truck to queue up a look at Eisfelder, a Tennessee recruit. Took that hanging curveball out. Jim Callis will always be able to say that he saw a wood bat home run during the MLB Draft Combine Showcase game. Hitting that out in a major league ballpark, I mean, that's a rush right there.
He's a big, strong kid there, and he showed off the strength on that swing.
Stars, number 9, Parker Aaron.
Taking the mound next, Noah Yoder. 6'6", 230-pound Duke commit. I think worst case scenario, they just need an extra guy to get some shots up during practice down in Durham. Noah Yoder.
Yeah, he's certainly interesting. You can see the size there. He's definitely projectable. He's more thrower than pitcher. A lot of it is because of the split focus between basketball and baseball. But he's got some really good stuff. You see the curveball right there. I mean, he has a chance to have two really good pitches in the fastball curve. The changeup, like with a lot of these high schoolers, needs some development. Didn't really need it in the Virginia high school ranks. He's committed to Duke, but he's number 162 on our top 200 for a reason. Even though he struggles with command, because when you're that big, repeating your delivery can be tough, and he does struggle. He can be a little bit long with his arm action in the back there. You saw the arm stroke right there, but he can crank it up to 97 miles an hour.
Do you think, being the size that he is, right? You always hear you can't teach size. Do you think a team is a little bit more open to maybe throwing some late round money the direction of a guy like that that's 6'6", and say, all right, we can clean this up with the mechanics, we can get him in the lab, we can tweak this pitch, versus maybe a guy that's not at that stature of Yoder?
I think it's not just size, because you could have a big guy who it's like violent delivery and it doesn't, but I think the combination of his size and his athleticism, then yes, I think that teams could potentially have an interest in a guy like that, seeing huge ceiling, and there's already now stuff, so example that I go back to often thinking about high schoolers high upside is Tyler Glasnow. And Tyler Glasnow, when he was coming out of high school, threw like 89 miles an hour, and to the Pirates' credit, they saw that he was going to get bigger and stronger and he was going to throw harder. It doesn't always work out that way. Nowhere Yoder, he's already touching mid to upper 90s, so you've already got that piece of the puzzle. I think with the athleticism, even though tall guys with long levers can struggle repeating the delivery, you're going to have a little more faith that athleticism is going to help him learn a delivery that works for him, that he can repeat more consistently.
And it's interesting looking at him too. He's committed to Duke, so you figure he's probably a pretty good student, and college probably means something to him, so that's part of it. Although, then you can look at it from the other direction. The coach who recruited him to Duke, Chris Pollard, is now at UVA now that Brian O'Connor has gone to Mississippi State. So, we talk about, we spent a lot of time tonight and our podcast already, I was talking about players' ability. That signability piece is so crucial to figure out, because you don't want to take Noah Yoder. Let's say you take him in the 3rd round and you're willing to give him a 7-figure bonus, who knows? And then you find out, oh, well, we can't sign him. Then you lose that money out of your bonus pool and you can't spend it on somebody else.
And I think that's like the behind the scenes, the behind the curtain that most fans, when it's like they want to know, all right, who do we take? Who do we get into the system? That it was great having Danny Haas on earlier to get to speak a little bit about that behind the scenes look at what goes on in the process. Obviously talking about you always want to get the best player available. It's not always drafting for need. It's drafting for what you can build in an organization over multiple years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, especially when you're picking 1-1, you got to take the best player.
Yes. Now, there may be a disagreement in who you think that best player is, right? And one team may say this player is the best player, and I think this draft is especially like that, where maybe even the majority of scouting directors think Ethan Holiday is the best player, and we've had him in the top spot, along. But he's not the slam dunk best player. So another team may think Jamie Arnold or Cade Anderson from LSU is the best player.
Right. It was so interesting getting to read. We mentioned earlier, Jack Caglione called up a couple weeks ago, made his major league debut, reading some of the Royals folks. They had Cags 1-1 on their board, right? When they got him at the 6th pick, they were over the moon. So similarly, some teams, the Pirates picked 6th this year, they may have zeroed in on a guy who's still on the board when they pick, and they're getting their 1-1 guy.
Yeah, it's extremely possible. I think last year was an interesting draft because both the Royals and then the A's with Nick Kurtz, that was their bet. That was the player they liked the most.
And the Rockies with Charlie Condon,
right.
And the Reds with Chase Burns, and the Guardians will tell you about Travis Bazzano. You get some. There's a little revisionist history times, but yeah,
of course, right, without question. But yeah, last year was a year where I think everyone got the guy that they felt they valued most. Now, if you pulled everyone who was in the room, there might be some disagreement, but for the most part, they were all extremely happy. Well, with the guys they want, and obviously the A's and Royals have already gotten return on investment with those guys being in the big leagues.
I think the interesting thing is if you look at last year, the reason all those teams
Sebastian Norman is just wearing him. He came to the high school. I hope in his last at bat he gets to take some hacks.
The first one hit him in the head. It was like an off-speed pitch that hit him in the head the first time up. But I was going to say last year the difference between everybody getting the guy who's at the top of their board is there were so many players worthy of being the #1 pick. It was a loaded draft class. This year, nobody's really separated themselves. So you talk to different people. It's not like, oh man, there's so many guys to choose from. Like who am I picking number one? This year, it's like, I don't know who the number one guy is, and you have a difference of opinions from that standpoint.
No, and I believe when we talk to teams picking at the top, and every year they'll tell us, they're looking at a certain amount of players, and I doubt at this point that the Nationals are still really seriously considering 7-8 players on the same plane. I do believe that they are not completely forgetting about, say, 2 or 3 of them in case when you start talking about signability. Will you sign for this? Jim mentioned the $11 million slot. That's where not signability, but will they sign for X amount underneath that pool?
And that's what's so interesting to me is that you hear about, okay, a team won the draft lottery, right, which happens during the offseason. Team won the draft lottery, they get 1-1. Yeah, but they also get those bonus pools, which you then can spread around. So a team doesn't just win a 1-1. And I'm sure, Jim, you've talked a little bit about how this draft class maybe not as star-studded at the top as some other years, but that doesn't mean it's like the Nationals, this is a bad year to win it, right? There's never a bad year.
There's all-stars in every draft.
Right.
There's good players in every draft.
It's a matter of finding them, and you have the additional resources to kind of get really creative here with some other of their moves beyond just 1-1.
No, they have the $16.6 million pool, as Danny said. Hey, he wasn't willing to commit to the 9.3. We'll see who they take. But like, there's no way they're paying.
Jim Callis trying to break news during.
Well, no,
of course.
I'll say if Ethan Holiday goes number one, I will predict that his advisor Scott Boras will look to break the $9.25 million bonus record, and then Ethan Holiday will sign for $9.3 million. Maybe even if he doesn't go number one, that'll happen.
Right.
But if they go, let's say they go, Eli Willits. Eli Willits isn't going to get $9.3 million this year. He might get. They can only cut 25% if he took a physical, and I haven't kept track of who's doing it, so it's like $8.3 million. But right. In any case, they're going to have plenty of money to play with. But and Jesse, what gets overlooked on the flip side is you look at the White Sox, who had the best, most losses. They had the worst record in baseball last year, but because they are a revenue-sharing payor. I get to use the word payor. The only time I ever use the word payor.
Jonathan made me describe a Rolodex on live television. You want to do payor?
Yeah, payor. Revenue. They pay into revenue sharing rather than receiving from revenue sharing. They can only win the lottery, which is usually means you pick in the top 6 1 year in a row, which they did the year before. So they were prohibited from even being in the lottery this year. And so not only do they only pick 10th instead of having as good of odds as anybody picking number 1. They lost to pay. They would have probably had a top 3 pick at worst. They lost $3.3 to $4.8 million depending where they were, and so it hits you in that regard also.
Throughout, right. Sort of talking about this is not the best class and things like that. I think a mistake can be made in lamenting a certain year's draft class in comparison to other years because. You can't take guys from last year's draft class this year. You have to take who's in this class. So the Nationals' job is to look at the players, pick who they think is the best player, and get it right. You want to get 1-1 right regardless of the year and how it compares to other years.
We're going to get a 2 RBI knock here from our buddy Gabe. He was tweeting at us during batting practice. He
right
was down on the
BP
field.
session.
Yeah, he was locked. That's get your BP in, then tweet at the broadcast.
Grolo, yeah, he's an interesting guy, super athletic. Just kind of cued that off the end of the bat, but it was found enough green to bring in a pair of runs.
I don't know, team star is going to need to get their exit velo up in the second game of this doubleheader. Jim, we are sticking around for the doubleheader, right?
Sure. Hey, I attended most of a 13-inning game. I could do 2-7.
Jesse, you're gonna be pitching innings 2 through 5 in that game.
I'd get a couple innings in. Thanks to everybody for joining us out there. Jesse Borick alongside Jonathan Mayo, Jim Callis here at Chase Field, home of the Arizona Diamondbacks. It's about 112 degrees outside at 7:30 at night. We hope it's a lot cooler wherever you are. Enjoying a nice cooling beverage on this Tuesday evening. Takes off. Not on the same page. Gonna get a stolen base. Gonna take an extra bag. Team Stars really pushing the pace. I wonder if that was part of the pregame meeting for Team Stars.
Well, they're young kids. They're going to be aggressive. They want to show that they can run, and Gabe Grillo runs very well, especially for a guy his size. So it's a chance for them to show off a tool that is not one that you can teach really.
And we always say this, even in the futures game too. Any showcase game, in general, the coaching staff is like, I'm not. Everybody has the green light. We're only going to have a red light. There may be certain situations, if the game's on the line late, where we don't want you to run, but you guys know yourselves. And like we talk about pitchers trying to throw hard, or sometimes guys swing for the fences. Everybody's stealing bases in these games.
I would be remiss if we let Charlie Buckles hit here. Attendee of Walt Whitman High School. I didn't break out some Walt Whitman on the air. Let your soul stand cool and composed before a million universes. This is like, I feel like I'm reading a Jonathan Mayo draft blurb out here. I got to start getting some of the poetic references in on
it's very
MLB.com.
it's very rare when
that sounds more like a Jesse Boric International scouting report.
You know what
he's
referring to Mariners reliever Jimmy Joyce, and I quoted James Joyce.
Oh, well, there you go.
In his blurb.
I missed that one.
We got to get Jim Callis.
That was a masterpiece.
Jim producing Jonathan's draft blurbs. They're gonna know the whole country together. You're not gonna need me anymore, boys.
All right, that inning rolled over because of pitch count.
We thank you for joining us here. Yeah, look at these drone shots. Were you out here this morning, Jim? Were you also getting the drone shots?
I was operating the drone.
6 hours.
I was operating the drone from my perch on the third base concourse.
Jim was actually in a hot air balloon with a camera.
Well, at least after this, we get to go take a dip out in the pool out in right center field. Chase Field, the home of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Just such gracious hosts for us. Yeah, there's a pool out there. That's real.
Have you ever been in it?
I have not been in it.
What are you doing, man?
The closest I ever got, and this is my one cool Chase Field story that I can tell. I actually have a lot of cool Chase Field stories, but this one, I was standing out by that pool, right by one of those bricks over there, during the 2011 All-Star Game. Just bought brand new white designer shoes. I was wearing them, and a stadium employee came over to me and said, "Hey, do you want to catch fly balls in center field?"
Told me the story. I love this story.
And I was like, yeah. I was 17 years old, dating myself a little bit there, but I was like, absolutely, I want to catch fly balls in center field. So I go out during the third inning, and I get out there. They give me some glove that was made of, like, it'd make the Sandlot look like it was real leather. They just, the ball goes up in the air, and anybody who's never taken a fly ball inside of a major league ballpark absolutely lost it in the lights. No chance. And then at the last second, found it in the air, made the catch. I caught the next two. I got a clap from Matt Kemp in center field who was playing. I didn't want to turn and look at the 50,000 people. That would make me way too nervous at that point, but I had my little
right they were all watching
section.
You.
They were. What else is going on? We're in between innings during the All-Star game. It's not like we're on national TV or anything.
Right.
17 years old, Matt Kemp standing right next to me. So that's my good Chase Field story.
That's a great Chase Field story. I love you're saying you're dating yourself. That was in 2011. I think I was in my 12th or 13th year working for MLB.com. So, careful, young man.
I hope to one day reach those same levels. 2011, the Arizona Diamondbacks. Look at our TV crew. They're
working
that
hard.
up. Look at that. The NL West champions that year. Just incredible. The D-backs got to bring back their Serpientes colors this season for their new City Connects. Very sweet. Some of these kids, they hope one day to be part of.
That's the goal.
Division championship team, wild card winning teams. That's the goal. And I think that's something we hear from. We do countless interviews up at our MLB Pipeline Suite. Very exclusive entry. But we do all these countless interviews, and I think that's something we hear so much from players is that these kids, they're here because they want to make a really good impression on front offices, because they want to be winners. I think across the board, all these other things that come with this day and age of young players, young baseball players, the attention put on them. At the end of the day, it's really incredible to see how dedicated these kids are across the board to want to be part of a winning culture.
It's old man Boric there. Not just old man Callis in the booth.
I've been hanging out with Jim Callis too long, man.
On his
no such thing as too much.
That's very
loving the kids today.
Kids these days, I love them. Keep me young. Going to see Blake Ilitch here. Yeah, and if that name sounds familiar to you, part of the Ilitch clan. Grandson of former Tigers owner Mike Ilitch.
Nephew of current owner Chris Ilitch. He can touch 94. He can flash some good curveballs. Probably not ready for pro ball at this point in terms of consistency of stuff and strikes. But, got some good size to him. He's committed to Mississippi. So he's got a chance to go to an SEC school.
Kid's just doing bicep curls and chugging Red Bull before he comes out there. This is my type of energy.
I feel like if you had a draft combine shirt, it would be kind of cut like Illich's shirt here.
We've got a couple days that we could still make something like that happen. You know people, Jim.
I kind of want a T-shirt with Rick Eckstein's little 1 equals 1.
1 equals 1.
I was wondering where he's going with that. I was like,
yeah,
what?
Of course it does.
You want to talk about guys you'd run through a wall for? Rick Eckstein. Whew. It's got to be cool to be that young and have a guy just such a wealth of knowledge. They say he's forgotten more about baseball than you know. The blast into these events that these kids get to have nowadays, and all the talent that they get to pull from. Velasquez going to walk again here. Get to see coming up next, Liamsi Montanez, one of 4 players from Puerto Rico here at the Draft Combine. A little international flavor. Guys from different parts.
Liamsi Montanez.
Yeah, he's got some skills. He needs a lot more reps, but he's got a decent left-handed swing. Kind of works uphill. Needs to get a little stronger so he can add some more bat speed.
Nice back pick there. That was impressive from Quinn Shambo.
He loves the back
you
pick.
like your Mr. Back pick.
Mr. Back pick.
He knew Jonathan was in attendance, so he was going to break that out. That's his signature move.
Do not take too long of a
That
secondary.
was quite a secondary lead. I almost think he got his foot back in.
He might have.
It wasn't the quickest tag.
I think replay review would have to uphold that one. I don't know if you've got.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think replay review is keeping this game moving as quickly as possible. So, we're calling guys out on close plays. If you take too big a lead, you're just out, even if you made it back just in time.
I know draft fever is taking over for you guys at this point in the season. Gets a chopper there, second base. So I know draft fever is kind of taken over everything you do. What I'm curious about is for the fans out there, how much of that balance at this point in the year are you still locked in on what's going on in the minor leagues, what's going on in the draft? I know the draft has kind of become this beast now. I know the timing isn't maybe great for you guys where it's moved to the weekend, where it's moved in the calendar.
Don't get us started on that.
Yeah. we will not talk about that. I would say at this point, I'm 80-20 draft focused.
I will take the over.
90-10?
Yeah, it's the minor leagues. It's more when I'm forced to be. I do the Giants and Red Sox.
Right, when we need
Rafael
replacements
Devers
for our
trade,
top
it's
right.
okay, I got to lock in. Where am I going with this? And
a guy gets called up to the big leagues who's a top 100 guy, and we do a what to expect.
Yeah.
And one of those comes.
Well, those are always must read. I mean, every time that one of them comes out, you got to.
Well,
read.
that's your job, but you must read them. So.
But and you'll see highlights on the MLB Pipeline Twitter account or whatever.
You're welcome. We got you. No problem.
But if it's somebody who's not in one of my 10 organizations I'm in charge of, I couldn't necessarily tell you how. Just to pick a random red, how's Sammy Stafura doing? Like Jonathan does already. I have no idea. I can't keep track of that. I'd say
that's
it's
fair.
90-10 right now.
So isn't that to an extent when you guys are going out and collecting your research, right? Because I think a misconception about a lot of what we do at Pipeline is that it's Jim Callis and Jonathan Mayo's opinion, right? And that's not necessarily true. So fill in for the people, both on the draft and prospects in general. Set the record straight. How much intel from so many different places goes into this?
I think those two lists are different. The draft list, we try, there is some of our gut feel and opinion there. But the draft list, we are trying to reflect what we think the industry consensus is. It's not, man, Jonathan likes Noah Yoder, so we're jacking him up to 38 on the list or something, or whoever. I know Jesse right now is thinking of players he knows I hate. Well, I'm not going to mention by name. We're not going to punish them just because I don't like them. If the industry likes them, Jesse can't even speak. I've rendered him incapacitated with that comment.
By the way, rendering Jesse Borek speechless is quite a feat
tough,
in and of itself.
But I don't want him to choke on his energy bar
that's
over
fair.
there. But no. So on the draft list, I think it's more. This is the industry consensus. For the team list, it's interesting. I think it's much less that. Again, we do get input from teams. We also get input from outside the organization as well. The teams are going to know their players better than anyone, but they're also going to have their own biases. I always compare it to kids. You love your kids more than anybody else loves your kids. The team loves its prospects more than other people love their prospects. So we get more opinions. But the team, I think, there's more of our individual subjective opinion of top 100 list we get feedback on, but top 30 list, if you don't like a guy or you really like a guy, you'll move him up and down more than you would with the draft.
Yeah, I mean, it's still based more on information that we are gathering than us going and seeing players. We just don't have time. And
it's not always performance-based, right? Because I think the complaint that you see from some people is, man, this guy's doing X. How's he not on this
There's
list?
projection.
How's he not higher? Yeah. There's a lot of projection,
of course,
balancing proximity.
When we do the minor league lists, we're trying to project who will be the best major leaguers in however many years down the line you want to project, 5, 6, 7, whatever it is. And it is incredibly subjective. Even if we elicited 1 million opinions, they're still opinions, and the consensus often is wrong. And then looking at the draft list, where it really is, as Jim was saying, we're reflecting
14 strikes now,
our sort of collation of opinions across 30 major league organizations when it comes to player evaluations. And there may be a guy that everyone thinks is the top guy, and that guy doesn't make it. I mean, that happens. Everyone has every scouting director has a player that they thought was a slam dunk who doesn't make it to the big leagues, and vice versa, a guy that they were light on that they should have taken and didn't, who ended up starring for another team. So, but I do think we just don't have the time. I mean, for our minor league lists, it's myself, Jim, and Sam Dykstra oversee all 30 teams. We have some, beat writers who help out writing some of the lists, but we're the ones who are overseeing it. And for the draft, it's just Jim and I, and we're about to expend to 250. We don't have time to go out and scout them during the spring. So I always tell people I'm a reporter. I'm not a scout. Do we know what we're looking at? Yeah, to an extent. Do our opinions filter in at times? We like a guy, we have a gut feel, more so on the minor league list than the draft list. I agree with Jim. But we're collators of information more than we are evaluators, much more than we're evaluators.
I definitely, having taken over the top 50 international prospects list this year, I've gotten a front row seat at the work that you guys have gotten to do over the years, and seeing that, I mean, you guys are doing this on kids that there's tons of video on the international side. I'm maybe sometimes going off some lesser information.
You're not spending months in the Dominican?
Those guys? Yeah,
you should.
Right.
You can run the website from down there. What are you talking about? Why aren't you down there? But no, Jonathan's right. I mean, we do. It's nice, especially now that we have access to Synergy and 643 charts. We have video on a lot of these players, so you can actually see them, which is nice. I've said many times, and I've said this to you, Jesse, many times since you took over the international list from Jesse Sanchez. I want no part of doing the international list. I think
you could come hang out. We could work something out.
I think it would break me. It's because I also draw the comparison. Like a lot of these international guys, they signed at 16, but they've kind of been taken off the market at 14. Somebody's seen them play since they were like 14 or 15 years old, and I know it'd be the equivalent if Jonathan and I were doing top high school freshmen in the country right now. If we looked at that,
I think you guys could do it. Honestly,
we're not. We don't have
the
time.
people
Stop.
want it.
Not going to have it. But my point is, that's not what I was going, so stop that. But my point is, if we did that list right now, Jason Ratliff's in the booth, we don't need him hearing this. He already wants us to do a 2026 list, but we're too busy. Can't do it. But if we did a top freshman list and we looked at that list 3 years down the road, we'd be like, man, this is all over the place. Like this guy we thought was good, he never got any better. When
that's why we were talking with Rick Eckstein.
Yeah.
Your Team USA. It's that a lot can change.
And I think that's what's so interesting, right, is when you're taking a high school player. I don't care what round you take him in, right? You could take him as a high overslot sign. You could take him whatever the situation is. Jim, I had asked you about one particular guy. I had asked you about Jordan Lawler a couple weeks ago, doing some of the D-backs TV that I do. Fans just being like, you see that nice strikeout there from Chiron, just up in the zone with the heater. A guy like Jordan Lawler, 22 years old, he'd be a senior if he stayed at Vandy. He had been committed to Vandy out of high school before the D-backs took him in the first round, right? Let's just say he had stayed at Vandy. I think pretty safe to say he'd be, if not a slam dunk, in serious consideration for the first overall pick. So guys will develop in pro ball.
Maybe if he stayed for his senior year of college, no.
Yeah, I was gonna say if he was like he would have been in the mix last year. But I know what you're saying. If you took a 2022 guy, sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right, and that guys develop in pro ball differently, right? Like the way you develop at 18 to 22 is maybe a lot different than the way you develop from 14 to 18.
Yeah. Well, there's less projection involved. I mean, it's hard enough. We're watching these high school guys, and we're talking about having to project them 5-6 years down the road. When you're looking at 14 and 15-year-old kids, you're projecting them a decade down the road.
Bruin Agbayani runs into one there in the gap, and now he's going to show off that run tool. We saw him try to steal 2 bags earlier. Bruin Agbayani zooms into third, 106 miles an hour off the bat. Son of Benny Agbayani, Michigan commit, Hawaii Gatorade Player of the Year. As Jonathan mentioned earlier, the top high school player out of Hawaii. Going to show off a couple tools there. Turns and burns on that inside heater.
He did a really nice job. Because Chiron, it's not easy to pick up. You saw on the strikeout, previous hitter. I don't think he can pick it up. And a left-handed hitter, that can be an uncomfortable at-bat. And he just pulled his hands in and ripped it to right center.
Chiron immediately knew he made a mistake. Like he didn't even turn to look at the ball. He just hung his head. Went over to back up third.
Yeah, that was almost to the warning track here at a big league park. I'm imagining a lot of the high school fields that most of these kids played on. Either that one's rolling for a really long time or it went over the fence.
And if it was a high school game, he's using an aluminum bat, and
yeah,
it's over the fence here, if that were the case.
Call eventually, and he's out.
Add
you, all dramatic effect.
All close calls are getting out.
For dramatic.
I didn't know if he was like, look at the plate umpire waiting for him to make a call.
Right, he wasn't sure it was fair, but
that's an aggressive pickup. But we're in a showcase game.
He even checked the runner to make sure he wasn't coming home. But nice play there. Didn't rush the throw. Chiron, can get it up to 94, 95. He can really spin a breaking ball.
I think a kid like this is interesting. This was something that I hadn't really done too much with until I had gotten to talk to you guys a little bit. He's only going to be 17 at draft time. How much do you think that there are certain organizations that fits their model, is the phrase I've heard, where you're going to have a kid who's still going to be 17, they've got a little bit more leash, and some teams will be the other way, where if you're 19 at draft time coming out of high school, there's a couple organizations that are maybe like, I don't know about that. We don't have as much development track that we can run with a player like this.
Well, I checked in with the scout that I know and asked him about Chiron, and the first thing he brought up with it is that he's 17. So that should tell you something, especially because there's some projection there. Yes, there's not as much track record, but I think there's a feeling that when you're talking about an upside high schooler.
And you mentioned Cold Weather State. We talked about that earlier. Hasn't had as much exposure.
Finished off the inning nicely there after the triple. That it does matter, because you feel that if you think a guy's projectable and there's upside, then there's even more because they're so young. Yes, not as much data. That's true, but that's true of any high school. You have the same data for him as any high school senior, depending on how many showcases they do. There were some things with Chiron in terms of maintaining velocity, which he hasn't always done, but there's more faith that he's going to get there as he matures and continues to add strength. And there are teams that very much like younger players, and it fits, you said, the team model. Conversely, there are teams that if you're 19 at the draft, they won't take you, at least not early on.
Yeah, I think that one of those guys was Aiden Miller, I believe, right? A couple years ago, the Phillies' first-round pick, who was 19 at draft time. So he had that hamate issue also as well. So that was kind of on some teams, the combination of those two things. He fell to the Phillies at the back end of that first round. He's been really impressive. He's a top 30 overall prospect for us as he's gotten his pro career.
I think one of the ones that we always talk about is Brett Beatty from his draft year. And he was 19. There were teams that wouldn't touch him. Meanwhile, he was in the big leagues at what, age 22?
Well, how about shortstop in Kansas City, Bobby Witt Jr. was 19. And they're like, really, you're not going to draft that guy? 'Cause he's 19?
I mean,
no, there were teams there's model teams that would not have taken him at 2.
Right.
Like,
fair enough.
I'm not saying that like if you were sitting there at 25, you'd be like, I can't take him.
So to your best guess, why is that? Because if I'm a fan, right? Like Witt went at 2, right? And so I know earlier on MLB Network we had this discussion of Adley or Bobby Witt, going number 1 overall. Let's say that Witt had gone later in the first round or whatever the case may be. Why is that at 19 some teams are like, I don't know about that guy?
Now you've opened a can of worms because I have a big long spiel about this. The short answer is, like Jonathan was talking about, there's more versus less projection involved. The longer answer is, I'm going to blame Mike Trout for this. This is Mike Trout's fault.
Jim Callis is anti-Mike Trout.
No, I'm not. I didn't say it was anti-Mike Trout. I'm saying this is Mike Trout's fault because if you do any kind of draft study and Mike Trout winds up in whatever bucket, it blows up your draft study because Mike Trout is the equivalent of like 10 good first-round picks all by himself. Like he's just that crazy good. Mike Trout was 17 when he was drafted. So if you do draft research, and whenever you do draft research, you also have to, you can't do the most recent years because you have to give guys time to have their careers play out. So we're projecting guys down the road. And so for a while, if you were doing an age-based draft study, it could be skewed because Mike Trout was so good. Now, we saw today, I mean, this is going way back, but not, I mentioned Bobby Witt Jr. Manny Ramirez was 19. We're not going to draft Manny Ramirez because he's 19 years old. I can't take that guy. And then what's dumb about it too, I get where it could be a tiebreaker, but like you'll get teams that won't draft the 19-year-old hitter. I think it matters a little bit more for hitters than it does for pitchers, although you do a physical projection involved. But you won't draft the 19-year-old hitter. But hey, he goes to college. He's a draft-eligible sophomore. We love that guy. Like that guy.
It's 2 years of data at the college.
I know, but I'm still saying it's the same guy. Like,
listen, Jim and I share the same soapbox on this one.
So anyway, I won't get into long thing. But the example I use is if you were doing an overly simplistic draft study, and you're like, we're going to go just look at the demographics, high school, college, pitcher, hitter, and we'll throw in by state. So we're going to figure out what's the best state demographic to take. So for a while, if you were looking at New Jersey high school hitters, you get Jack Cust and Eric Duncan, Billy Roll. You're like, oh man, I can't draft a high school hitter out in New Jersey. So like 2009 draft. And again, I'm not saying teams do studies that simplistically, but if that was how you were looking at draft data, it would be like, man, the New Jersey high school hitters, they just don't pan out in the first round. So like, you're not gonna take Mike Trout. Is that gonna scare you off in 2009? But then the flip is now, are we gonna, every high school hitter comes out in New Jersey, we gotta take them because like per capita or per player, like the war return's crazy.
You got Anthony Volpe.
Well, like the situation where I think that's so interesting at the combine, where you could just sit in a room and maybe the data says one thing, right? Because we are in a data-driven game at the end of the day. Every team has whatever form of data collection that they believe is the best process for all of us. See a nasty breaking ball ripped off there by Brody Earlbeck, who I know you guys have already on the top 200.
Top 200.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's necessarily going to get signed because it's not big-time stuff, but, man, he can really pitch. It's like it's the fastball will top out 94 and sit in the low 90s, but it's deceptive, low arm slot, and flat approach angle. He gets good break on that slider. His best pitch is actually his changeup. He's got a plus changeup. Just threw a bolt there at 93 with the sinker. I think this is the type of guy who, again, his present stuff isn't that good where you're going to necessarily throw 7 figures at him, but I could see him going to Iowa and becoming a pretty good pick in 3 years and also pitching well as a freshman.
He's left-handed though, so there's less pressure to light up the radar guns, even at a high school level.
It's still it's a present 40 fastball. Like, I don't know if you're giving that 7 figures.
Yeah, unless you feel, I'll use the Tyler Glasnow example again, and he may be the exception rather than the rule. But like, if you think that he's going to get stronger, and it looks like he should,
6 foot.
I think he's pretty.
He can put on some weight, but I'm saying Tyler Glass. I know.
Right. No,
like,
no.
He's not the most. He's more. He can really pitch. It's like, and this is what scouting's all about. How much projection is there with this guy?
Well, I mean, it's, looking at lefties who are doing well in the minor leagues now. Like Gage Jump was a guy who, out of high school, was very much like this,
but much more highly regarded.
Pitchability. Was he?
He would have been top 2 round pick if he was.
Okay. I'm relying on your institutional memory, which is crazy. But
so you just make things up and totally.
Yeah, and I remember him.
And I'm just here to steer the ship.
There's that changeup, by the way.
That's a heck of a pick over at first base from Charlie Buckles.
How many 13 pitch innings?
Yeah, they're
I think we're gonna get one
more. Face another hitter.
We're gonna get one more batter. Everybody, you know what?
Guys who know how to.
I just called down actually to the dugout, and I said Jim and Jonathan were not done talking about Brody Earlbeck yet. Can we? One more?
And I want to. I'm using Gage Jump as an example. I was fine. He was more highly regarded, but he was a pitchability guy, and in some ways he's the same guy. He went on to college. It's not like he started throwing 10 miles an hour harder and things like that. He got a little more polished, maybe gained a few more ticks, more consistent velocity. But could you have signed that Gage Jump in high school and developed him in the program, and he'd be the same Gage Jump we're seeing dominate the minors now? Maybe.
Ooh. That ball's hammered by Connor Essenberg down into the left field. At least 2 bags out of this one. 107 miles an hour off the bat. That ball was
sound.
Ball had hair on it. Absolutely stung. And now we're going to call it in because we said, we'll get one more for Earlbeck, and we're good. Earlbeck got his 16 pitches in. Pretty impressive inning overall, but also an impressive double here off the bat of Connor Essenberg. Get to take that with you. He's going to get another inning. He's going to get a little breather, and then he's going to come back out and pitch the 7th. So if you like what you saw from Connor Essenberg there, don't go anywhere.
Two-way guys.
This would be the part where I would lead into a commercial break, but you know what? We don't need commercials.
You were about to right there, weren't you?
No. We are ready to go here. Chase Field, Jonathan Mayo, Jim Callis, Jesse Borick joining you from lovely Phoenix, Arizona. We'll be here tomorrow as well. A lot going on here at the MLB Draft Combine. We've got all your coverage over at MLB.com/pipeline. Of course, follow us on all of our socials, the MLB Draft account, MLB Pipeline. Even get a little minor league baseball. Don't forget about that. There's always the minors going on. You never know what's going to happen in the minors.
That's true.
But we're focused right now on the 2025 draft class, the Draft Combine here. Had a lot of on-field events earlier in the day. I know you guys mentioned some of your favorite players. Was there anybody that's maybe totally kind of come out of left field for you that was like, man, I didn't know much about this guy? And now you've come to the Draft Combine, you've had some time, you got to see him up close. You think he's kind of an interesting guy, maybe a name that some people should know something about.
I'm not going to be arrogant here. Maybe I'll sound arrogant. I don't think anybody today snuck up on us.
You know everybody, Jim.
No, I'm not saying that, but like I think almost everybody who performed today, unless they were like a son of a former big leaguer, was on our top 200 prospect list. So, I mean, I don't think we had the MIT kid.
Yeah, Mason Strada, yeah.
On our top 200, but he's on your radar. You knew who he was.
Exactly Tennessee transfer.
Yeah, no, he's certainly interesting, and he threw hard, and does look like a future professional reliever. Whether he goes on to Tennessee or not.
Number 25.
So I mean, and that's a good story. I don't know that there's everyone else is ranked. Certain guys maybe perform better, but you don't want to take too much away from, say, batting practice, where guys like, but there are guys that are on our list who kind of did what you think they would do and maybe a little bit better.
You mentioned earlier you get to hear so much about these guys with we'll say like they have light tower power. I remember 2 years ago we were walking through dead center field and Brandon Winokur almost hit me with a home run ball which had to go about at least 450 feet, and then I think everyone was like, oh, okay. Like Brandon Winokur wound up going to the Minnesota Twins on an overslot selection. Really impressive start.
Right now.
Yeah, Cedar Rapids. Very impressive start to his pro career. So I think sometimes guys are able to, especially the high school kids, come on this stage and just be like, man, this guy is what we kind of thought he was.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, for me, I love seeing some of these guys up close I saw Quentin Young in the high school All-American game last year, but only really from up in the booth. So I was down on the field during his batting practice, and my goodness, just from a physical specimen standpoint, you understand what the fuss is about. I mean, and then he took batting practice, and he had some of the loudest BP of anyone that we saw today. So that's always great for us. You know, it's not moving, like I said, it's not moving the needle all that much, but it's always good to see players that we write and put on lists but don't see in person. To see them do anything in person on the field is a treat.
Yeah, Tatum Gray was a guy like that. He put on a nice BP show from Iowa, and I'd heard a lot of guys talk about him, but I'd never seen him.
It sounded like cannon blast. I was standing next to the batting cage.
Tate Southacene is another one. I'd never laid eyes on him. I just had heard that he, you know, had gotten pretty physical.
Wicked hook there from Alex Barr to freeze Briscoe. Going to strike out to start off the 6th inning here.
And you know, to see Tate Southacene take a really good BP where a ton of high exit velos and hit some of the farthest balls. You know, his brother was a 4th round pick a year ago with the Cubs, but a smaller middle infielder, heady kind of player, and his younger brother has more, you know, noticeable and louder tools, and he was able to show that off. It was, again, one batting practice session, but I had not seen him, and he's gotten even bigger and stronger than, you know, if you look at video from over the summer, he looks like more of a man than he did 8-9 months ago.
Really slow curveball there, 69.6 miles an hour. It's like a Zach Greinke on the mound, like has a left-handed Indiana high schooler. Although Barr has a good curveball. I think he's up to 94, 95. We've seen that tonight. Not a lot of strikes this spring necessarily in Indiana as a high school kid. Might be signable, so we might actually see him get drafted maybe 5th round or so because he's signable. We'll see, or maybe he's a 11th rounder who gets an overslot bonus.
I mean, you hear the phrase so often as he gets a 2nd straight punch out here. You know, there's a lot to dream on. I think that's something I've read in a couple of guys' blurbs before that used to produce. There's a lot to dream on, though. You saw there to finish off the at-bat, 94-mile-an-hour heater at the top of the zone after he just rolled a 70-mile-an-hour curveball up there. I mean, velocity discrepancy like that, 6'2", good body. He's got some bloodlines. His older brother played at the University of Indiana. Barr, definitely a kid. 95 dials it up there. I think you could definitely see pro teams be very interested in getting somebody like this, get their hands on him, mold him from a young age.
Wonder if we're going to get an extra batter from him here.
Nice pick. And they're going to call him safe. Well, you're definitely going to get an extra batter, Jim, because that's not the 3rd out.
I jinxed it. I jinxed it there. And that's the exception to my rule that every close call will result in an out. I think that was kind of...
There's a lot of callous rules over the years.
No, I'm just telling you.
It's
late at night. I think people are keeping this game moving along. But like he clearly pulled him off the bag.
Yeah.
You can't really call him.
There'll be an investigation out there, Jim.
They're going to have guys start pointing up the booth at Jesse. Like, that's going to be the challenge. Like, tap the helmet. Jesse gets to make the decision.
It's like the commercial where you can press the button to go play extra innings or overtime, you know. Sebastian Norman, I think his goal here is to have an at-bat and not get plunked. He's been hit twice so far. First in the head, he's okay, as you can see.
It was like about a 74-mile-an-hour breaking ball.
I was going to tell him to be aggressive early in the count here just to be safe. I think that's a draft combine game record.
Norman is a kid.
I will have to research that.
Twice, yeah. Can't imagine anyone.
That is a nasty
68.8 mile per hour curveball.
Whew. Norman's a guy in his own right, can pitch a little bit. He's 92 off the mound. Guys like him offensively. He's committed to Oklahoma State. Powerhouse program. Don't think if he does wind up going to Oklahoma State, I feel pretty confident in saying will not be playing alongside Ethan Holiday. Would think that, Ethan Holiday's pro career going to get underway. Jim, I know both you and Jonathan have written extensively your mock drafts. Sounds like the floor for a player of Ethan Holiday's prowess, obviously his brother Jackson, the first overall selection a couple years ago, leadoff hitter of the season for the Baltimore Orioles, just absolutely blitzed through the minor leagues. It sounds like Holiday's not going to go any lower than 4. That would be the floor, and that would be a Holiday reunion out in Colorado.
Yeah, no, I think that's something Colorado really wants to have happen. I think he either goes 1 to the Nationals or 4 to the Rockies. I don't think he's going 2 or 3 to the Angels or Mariners. If somehow, and I can't imagine this scenario where the Rockies passed on him, he wouldn't get past the Cardinals at 5. But I think it is.
That would be another Holiday reunion.
I've heard a rumor. You hear all this gossip rumors, whatever you want to call it, for the mock. Somebody was telling me that they think the Rockies are willing to go over slot and pay Ethan Holiday a record bonus
to make it happen.
To help push him to 4. So that, if there's a number, I should ask Danny Haas this. If there's a number,
he would not have.
I know he wouldn't. But if there's a number, let's say the Nationals say we want Ethan Holiday, but we want him at this number, then maybe the Rockies would say, hey, we'll give you that number plus more. Come down and visit us at number 4.
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's going to come down to the Nationals. That they decide they want him, they'll take him.
Well, what I would say. It's like my expression, prisoner of his own talent. Whatever the number is, Danny wasn't willing to commit to 9.3 for a guy. But let's say, let's say they take him and they offer whoever they take at 1. They offer him $9 million. Even if another team tells you, we'll let Jesse pretend he's this player.
Do I get to be Ethan Holiday in this prop? I'd like to have Ethan Holiday's talent.
So, the Nationals draft you and say, Jesse, we're going to give you $9 million, and there's another team that's like, Jesse, if you get to us, we'll give you 9.5. You're not turning down my $9 million to go play at Grand Canyon. You're signing for your $9 million.
And even if
Grand Canyon University really getting their money worth tonight.
Even if your original answer, if they ask you before they take you, well, no, I won't sign for that. You're going to take him anyway. He's the best player because you're going to figure it out.
Yeah, and
he's not gonna go on to college over, say, $500,000 or whatever. We don't need to get too deep into it about signing bonuses and things like that. But if the Nationals think that Ethan Holiday is the best player, they take him.
Yeah, because again, you're not going to be able to turn down the money. The only thing the player can do is make your life difficult by not signing until the last second. So then you can't use the savings on him on other players. Hunter Green did that with the Reds. He signed with supposedly 10 seconds to go,
right?
And they weren't able. They had Tommy Mace. They were going to sign Tommy Mace out of high school, and they couldn't.
Got Cooper Underwood coming in the game now for the Stars squad, but just want to go back real quick. Take a look at Alex Barr. Really nice performance there in the 6th inning. All 3 of those outs came by strikeouts, and he used that hook to get 2 of them. Obviously elevated there on the heater. That nasty 68.8-mile-an-hour curveball. Cooper Underwood now, we go from one impressive lefty to another impressive lefty. Part of a stacked Georgia Tech recruiting class for next season. Really looking like they're starting to put a nice little build together down at Georgia Tech. Underwood is number 170 for you guys on the draft prospect list. What do we know about Cooper Underwood?
He's got a really good feel for spin. He threw the last pitch 92, but when you talk to scouts, they'll debate that was a curveball there, whether the curveball's better than his slider. The slider's tighter, harder, like most sliders are compared to curve, but they're both at least solid pitches. He'll touch 93. He's still got the chance to add some more strength. He was a guy that I think coming into the year, people are like, based on last summer, okay, interesting arm, but it's all projection. He's going to school, and he's gotten a little stronger. He's throwing harder now. He's athletic. He's efficient. He throws strikes. There's still some room to add some weight to him. It'll be interesting to see whether the Yellow Jackets are able to keep him.
Pumping 93 there for the strikeout from Underwood.
He set him up really nicely there using both the fastball and the curveball. And he just couldn't pull the trigger on time right at the knees.
Number 26, Eric Hines.
Get a look at Eric Hines here. Alabama commit He's been up as high as 114 miles per hour on that EV. How much do you guys think, you've watched, Jim Callis has been around for 6 decades in the scouting industry. How much more things like that have changed the data? Teams have started to take an interest in those types of things as young as the high school level. Obviously, you can get a lot more data collegiately, but to still get those things at the high school level, that can kind of, I don't want to say, it's a big country, but you always hear the phrase, if you can play, they're going to find you. But how has the data kind of helped some players all across the map in that regard?
Well, the data's pretty proud. I mean, obviously, Eric Hines plays at American Christian Academy in Tuscaloosa. I'm going out on a limb and say they don't have a lot of TrackMan data there for his games. But when you're on the showcase circuit all summer, they're recording it at all these events.
Everything.
So, some of these guys, some of these hitters will get 100, 150 at-bats over the summer at events with data. And so that's a huge difference.
And I don't want to say it levels the playing field because it's an oversimplification. But, sometimes you may wonder, well, how do you evaluate a guy who's playing in an area where there isn't good baseball? And the summer showcase circuit helps do that. But if you don't get a ton of at-bats or a ton of innings, then you can look at the data and say, all right, well, so maybe he didn't, put up good numbers in the traditional sense. You can look at the, exit velocities, and you can look at spin rates for pitchers and things like that, and you can glean more from that. It's, and every team is looking at all the data, and you can hear anybody talking about, even the older school scouts, like, you can't have scouting now without the data. Now, I think the mistake is if you let the pendulum swing too far in the direction of data, and you're not paying any attention to the scouts you send out who are actually watching the players play and getting to know the players. That is a huge mistake that I think some teams have learned over the years as we've moved into this newer era where there's a lot more information. You need to combine all the avenues of information gathering that you can to make the best decision in what's a very subjective process.
Good battle here from Elam against Cooper Underwood. Impressive left-hander. I think there's so much more pressure nowadays in the sense of, you guys mentioned roster, organizational roster crunches. Also, and I think teams are, you've seen it over the years, teams are willing to give more of a leash as Underwood freezes him with a curveball. He's going to call it a day. Can't keep the hat on, so might as well keep it off. Walk off the field. Dominant performance there from Cooper Underwood in the bottom of the 6th inning. Filthy curveball. Back to that point, though, guys. I mean, you've seen it over the years how teams are willing to give a leash to players that are selected early in the draft, right? If you make a certain financial investment in a player, you hear so often, man, this guy was taken in the 12th round. Why is he not getting the same opportunities as the first rounder? And I think sometimes a lot of that is financial. You want to still believe in a player. So when these guys are here looking at all the data, relying on the information that scouts have gotten, when they make these financial commitments and first-round picks, yeah, it's a 2025 in this case financial commitment, but it's also a multi-year process that you really believe in that one guy and what he eventually can do for your big league organization.
Well, of course, you're signing a high school player in the first round and you're giving him 7 figures.
He's got to live on his own for the first time.
Yeah, you're not expecting a return on that investment right out of the gate, even if he's advanced. Now, you have an expectation that your first rounder is going to become a major big league contributor. Doesn't always work out that way, but that's the expectation. Jim, I think you and I often use the same lens because we'll talk to scouts and about mock draft, and they're like, I don't know how you're doing it this year. It's really tough, or how you're stacking up the top 50. There's a lot of information. How you doing? we're not signing any checks with a lot of zeros at the end of it. So our job is
Jason's not firing us. When he goes back and looks at the 2016 list, I think where we had Jay Groom #1.
Yes.
Jason's not like you guys are fired.
Yeah.
Like
So there's a lot less pressure for us. So it's hard. It's such a crapshoot.
The draft is hard.
Yeah, it is. The draft is hard.
One of our favorite scouts says that all the time.
Yes.
I want to talk about Connor Essenberg here for a second. He's coming in to pitch. He's also been hitting. We saw him hit a double earlier in the game. He's one of the more interesting guys that will be adding to our draft list when we expand to 250 in the next couple of weeks.
Two-way preview from Jim Callis.
Little preview.
Breaking news.
And guys, I get some guys who like him better as a hitter. I get some guys that like him better as a pitcher. He faced up against 103-mile-an-hour left-hander Jack Bauer, who's not pitching in this game, in April.
It's also not Kiefer Sutherland in 24.
No, he's
also,
not.
just to clarify.
Damn it, Chloe. But Essenberg, in that game, Essenberg outpitched Bauer, struck out 11, allowed just an unearned run in 5 innings, and he hit an opposite field homer off a 99-mile-an-hour fastball from Jack Bauer. But so, as a pitcher, we're going to see him now. He's low 90s. He touches 95. He's got a mid-70s breaking ball. He's more visible than projectable, but he'll flash changeup. He needs some more polish, which is a pretty interesting left-handed package on the mound. Here we're seeing there's that curveball. But then there's other guys that like him more as a hitter, although he's got the bats right, throws left profile that you don't want. But he's got bat speed. We saw him hit the double pretty hard. Projects as a right fielder, maybe first baseman, but I think he moves well enough to play in right field. But guys like him both ways. Not sure what it's going to take. It might be a tough sign to get him away from Kentucky, but very, very interesting guy.
I know the can of worms I'm opening here by saying this. I don't think there's anything that fans across the game like more than the appeal of a two-way player, right?
You're framing it well so far. Keep going.
So I think in Essenberg's case, right, if he goes to Kentucky, right, we saw last year Jack Caglione pitch and had a fair amount of success at Florida. He wasn't a dominant starter, but he was a
very good arm.
A very good arm at Florida, right? And the Royals said, hey, no, like, we're going to get him up to the big leagues as Rashad Hayes turns on one, rips that into left field. Good heads-up base running, doesn't break stride, comes into second, little stutter step, keeps his hand on the bag. He's going to get in there for a double. But to the point of Caglione.
You're not giving the left fielder an error on that one, Jesse, when he had the ball pop out of his glove? Come on.
He's kind.
There is no official scorer up here in the booth. We're going to give Hayes a double on that one.
I don't know if we are. Maybe you are.
In the case of Caglione.
On your own island there, but that's all right.
And Jim, you said earlier this year during the Top 100 release show that Caglione he should never throw another pitch as a professional, right? And he rushed up to the majors. So in Essenberg's case, do you think that being a two-way player does that hamper his development on the other side, whatever side that may be, that he has better upside?
No, I don't think it necessarily hampers it, because I think you get insight. If you're a pitcher, hitting gives you perspective from both sides. I think that's good. I do think that once you focus on one, you get once you focus on one, you have the room for growth. Like you have a chance to get better. So I just think like here, I've already blamed Mike Trout for the ageism. I'm going to blame Shohei Ohtani for making this look easier than it is. Like you're right. I think fans love the two-way player. Greg Amsinger, if he was in the booth, would argue with me. Every time he came up last year, Jack Caglione came up in any draft context. Like even on draft day, Greg said it as in we were talking about Jack Caglione. He's like, Dan O'Dowd, Jim wants to dash Jack's dreams of playing as a two-way guy. What do you think? And Dan's like, well, I agree with Jim. And because it's just too hard. The amount of, not just the difficulty of mastering both, but the physical preparation that goes to do one or the other, and the mental preparation, it's too hard. Like, Shohei Ohtani is the best baseball player of all time. Like, nobody's ever done anything remotely like what he's doing. Babe Ruth did it for 2 months. Shohei Ohtani's doing it against guys throwing 98-mile-an-hour fastballs that are moving like wiffle balls. Like, it's insane. And it's college level. I don't mind guys playing as a two-way guy at college level, but at pro ball, I would pick the guy and I'd make a decision one way or the other. And like for Essenberg, with him, if he goes to Kentucky, I'm all for him playing both ways, and then you can resolve that question. Is he better as a hitter?
One might jump to the fore, and even if both are the same, that I kind of like what some pro teams are doing, where they let a guy dabble in it maybe for that first summer in instructs.
Sure.
Like, I'm not even saying
Or bridge league.
or part of part of your first full season. Kind of think of like, the Pirates with Bubba Chandler, and that was high school, and they let him do both. And sometimes they realize and they come to the decision with the player recognizes, and I've talked to Bubba about it, and Bubba's like, I couldn't hit, right? The Red Sox did that with Casey Kelly years ago, where they let kind of Casey Kelly figure it out.
They sandbagged Casey Kelly, though, because what Casey Kelly was great is they put him in high A ball. No, because they thought he was the best high school pitcher in the draft. They put Casey Kelly in high A ball as a shortstop, and shockingly, he was overmatched. And they're like, hey, let's try pitching. Oh, by the way, you could start the futures game. And then you know what? Casey Kelly decided pitching might be the way to go.
better. Yeah, no, they
kind of stacked the deck.
They asked leading questions to get him to that decision. But I think a guy like Bubba Chandler, who was a two-way guy in high school and a multi-sports star, it was going to take him a little while anyway. So let him dabble in both a little bit. But I think if a guy like Jack Caglione, where it was clear the bat was well ahead of the arm. He had Tommy John surgery. His elbow was bothering him a little bit, but he really was more like of a relief pitcher. Command wasn't great, but he had a lot of arm strength. It wasn't like, I think he probably could have made it to the big leagues. That's when you kind of say, all right, and they clearly had talked about it. Remember, he was drafted as a two-way guy, and we talked to Caglione in Fall League. They had not made a final decision about all that, but they clearly discussed it. And listen, I think Jack's a smart guy. If you focus on hitting, you're going to be in the big leagues this year. Okay, I'm done pitching. Forget it. So I don't think it's that difficult a decision.
And in Jack's case, we've all gotten to speak to him. He's such a physical marvel at his size as well, that so much of that preparation, you mentioned a couple guys who have gone into pro ball as two-way players. They've been announced as two-way players, both from the Giants, both Bryce Eldridge and Reggie Crawford. That happened to both of their first-round picks back-to-back years. Quickly in both cases, Eldridge, they said, you're done on the mound. Reggie Crawford, they said, you're done hitting. He did come to the Fall League to hit that 1 year.
Only because he was hurt.
Yeah.
Like if he had been healthy, he would have pitched. And love Reggie Crawford. He cannot hit pro pitching. Like, he was so overmatched by same side breaking balls. Like,
but
great
that goes
power.
to speak how
He can win
difficult
home
it
run.
is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And like
ripped up the middle from Bruin Agbayani. Have yourself a game. 2 RBI single from Agbayani. Add that to his triple, his stolen base.
2 walks. I think he's been on base all 4 times.
The Jim Callis MVP vote is in. Bruin Agbayani.
Against the lefty again. He stayed back on the breaking ball, kept his hands back.
Right back up the box.
Right back up the middle. What you teach young hitters to do, right? You want them not to do too much, going back to that point that you brought up very early on.
If you've tuned in for the entire 2-hour and 17-minute broadcast, thank you out there. I'm Jesse Borick, joined by Jonathan Mayo and Jim Callis here at the MLB Draft Combine. We're coming up on the final inning of action. Got just a couple more pitches left in the tank for Connor Essenberg, and then we're going to have a bottom of the 7th no matter what. You got the stars, you got the stripes, you got the stars in the booth. I'm sitting next to the 2 biggest draft stars in America.
Stop it. Now you're embarrassing yourself.
Now we're just leaving you to the last, the bottom of the 7th by yourself.
Tell us about Jordan Serrano, Jesse.
Well, off the bat, Stony Brook School. Stand up, Stony Brook, New York. Everybody out there, Stony Brook native Serrano, a Wake commit. It's not often you see a lot of Long Island kids going to powerhouse programs all the time. Myself grew up in Center Ridge, New York, right next to Stony Brook University. Ooh, nice back pick.
Yeah. Good call.
Dallas Brooks show off the arm behind the dish.
We've seen some hoses from behind the plate, that's for sure.
And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about guys getting a little aggressive on the bases.
Well, you got a runner in front of you, so that's youthful exuberance, we'll call it.
I think you can understand it, right? Heart rate gets up a little bit out here. You're playing on a big league field. You get the D-backs logo behind home plate.
I think, Bruno Agbayani was just embarrassed by all the praise we were giving him, so he decided to have a base running blunder.
Quicker back to the dugout, the quicker you can get the Jim Callis MVP award.
Is it named after me?
Who else would it be named after, Jim?
I think it'd have to be named after, who was Brock Selvage. Brock Selvage was the first game standout at the first combine. So I feel like it would be the Brock Selvage.
We could do a hyphenated. We could do a real big award name there as we go into the final inning here at the 2025 MLB Draft Combine High School Showcase game. Guys, what didn't we cover yet on this 2+ hour broadcast? Thanks to Rick Eckstein for coming through from USA Baseball. Thanks to Danny Haas from the Nationals.
We didn't cover where you're taking us to dinner after this game. It's been a long day. We're hungry. You have the only car.
There's so much paparazzi, Jim. We can't reveal this to the public, or else we'd be
the autograph hounds will be after you
dinner.
All the people that tuned in to
tracking our
watch for 6
social
hours
media.
on MLB Network.
We've got one more day here at the Draft Combine. The Draft Combine will be hanging on for a couple more days after this. So make sure to tune in at MLB Pipeline on social media, MLB Draft account. We're less than a month to go for the MLB Draft. It's one of my favorite days of the year, getting to work with Jim and Jonathan, seeing all the effort that they put into it. And I think you guys would probably agree, getting to know these players off the field, which is what is another of the great things that happen here at the Combine. We get to really know some of these kids before they're drafted, and then once they're drafted, they get to start their pro journey. But to kind of just see that eagerness and so many of these kids across the board, this is the moment before they're the stars, really, even before they join the minor league.
Well, I think any time that we get to have conversations with them, at least from a coverage standpoint, just building relationships out of the gate. There are guys, who I got to know when they were amateurs and are now in the big leagues, and we still are able to talk to them. So this is just another chance, not only to see what they can do on the field, but to have those conversations with them, whether we're officially doing interviews with them or just chatting them up, after an interview or after a BP session. So it's invaluable for what we do, for sure.
I remember at the San Diego Combine where the hotel was within walking distance of Petco Park, so you walk back and forth. A little cooler than it is here in Arizona, where you can't really walk. We're staying a little further away. Usually we're 3 blocks away, and it's still a very hot walk. And I got introduced to Zach Neto by his agent, Gavin Kahn. And Zach, it's like when you go to winter meetings, there's one guy you see everywhere you go. I saw Zach Neto like 6 times, so I felt like I really got to know Zach, and I've done the Angels the last couple spring trainings for our prospect stuff for MLB Network, and I've run into Zach, and we always talk about Campbell baseball and those types of things. But yeah, it is kind of cool to see these guys. We got to interview Jamie Arnold. I think everybody interviewed Jamie Arnold today. You interviewed him.
Yep.
For us, we interviewed him on the podcast.
I'm going to text him and just interview him tomorrow just because we need a little extra
He'll be here.
content.
But Jonathan didn't get to meet his dad like I did in Corvallis, so I have that over.
You do.
And you interviewed him earlier in the year too.
So I did for the.
It's
for
old
the
hat.
podcast, yes.
Yeah.
I tried to come up with more questions, but then we were just chatting afterwards, and sometimes you get a little more of a glimpse. And the good thing is that he remembered me doing the podcast interview once he saw me. And now after interviewing him here, once he's in pro ball, if we see him in spring training, there's going to be a comfortability. When I talked to Jack Caglione in spring training this year, he remembered being on the podcast with us, and he's a personable guy, so maybe not the best example, but it often helps put people at ease when they know who it is that they're talking to.
And I think that's part of what we try to do is to bring stories to the people, to know who's going to be in your organization. I know ultimately a lot of fans out there, that's their ultimate goal, right, is to win ball games, cheer on the team that they root for at the big league level. But I think so often everybody's got a really interesting journey. Everybody comes from somewhere. Their baseball journey started. Somebody believed in them at a young age, and I think that's something we try to bring to the people, and the Combine is a great situation for that.
Well, Jess, I mean, you've interviewed a bunch of guys here at the Combine this year. You'll probably write like 12 stories after we leave here. So getting what you were just talking about, whose journey has intrigued you when you were talking to guys today, or maybe even somebody you didn't interview, but what stories had jumped out at you?
Wow, so I remember last year I was fortunate enough, if I'm allowed to factor in last year a little bit.
We'll allow it.
I will not.
Well, I'm going to talk to Bruin Agbayani tomorrow, and I'm going to name, to put that in context, I don't think Bruin Agbayani was born when I was watching his dad as a kid. So I'm the old guy in this scenario. As much as you guys rag me as the young guy.
Right, go back to last year. Who were you thinking?
So last year I got to talk with Cone Nikolai from Alaska. Went on to go play collegiately at Oregon. He was a draft pick of the Marlins, didn't sign. But getting to speak about his journey, and something that he said stuck with me. Every time he came to showcase events, whether it was in Arizona, California, Oregon, the west coast of the U.S., he said that you got to make sure every time I travel 2,000 plus miles or whatever it is, you've got to make it worth that journey. Can you imagine that pressure of you got to get on an airplane and fly from Anchorage, Alaska, all the way to your events, and you got to put on a show every time you come out there? And I think that's what's so incredible is that we get to meet these kids from so many different backgrounds. It doesn't matter if you're from North Dakota, you're from Alaska. We've had kids from all over that have been able to play their way to the stage here at the Draft Combine and have really impressed people and have gone on to have successful big league careers. We have no one from Alaska here this year, though.
No, but tomorrow you're talking to Strada from MIT, right?
Yeah. Also, very much looking forward to talking with Strada. Got to see him a little bit throw his bullpen earlier today. Aerospace. Live TV wasn't prepared for it. Aerospace technology, I believe, is his major at MIT.
I believe that's right.
Yeah.
Our coworker Kelsey Hennigan said that I attended the English equivalent of MIT at King's College London.
You've been waiting all day.
I have been waiting all day to get that plug in there.
Sure.
If we've got anybody watching in London, we're really doing something right tonight. We're just going to keep going with Nick Frusco, another native of Long Island, New York. Shout out Miller Place, Long Island, Nick Frusco. We're on an impressive stretch tonight of seeing some lefties.
Yeah, there have been some good lefties. He can spin the ball a little bit. Fastball has some good characteristics. It's the invisible fastball.
Don't let Long Island get a team together and play some kind of high school tournament.
And we're adding him. You're going to add him to our draft.
Yeah,
top
he's going to be a
right?
top 250.
Clemson commit, 6'5", good look.
Command's been up and down, but there's some interesting ingredients there. There's an exciting player from Long Island in this year's draft class who really intrigues me is Jaden Strobin, Marcus's younger brother, who until this year was he pitched, but he really thought of himself more as a shortstop. And he could play short, and he could run. There were some tools. The hit tool was a little bit behind. He kind of finally leaned into pitching this year. And area scouts were getting more and more excited because the more he was on the mound, the better it was. Super athletic. He's bigger than Marcus, but at the same athleticism. He can really spin a breaking ball. Not surprising. Something in the household where you have a very good curveball. But the fastball was like upper 90s, and he was holding it. Very curious whether he is signable because he's supposed to go on to Duke like his brother did, but he's played himself into the conversations.
Get out to right field there, Buckles underneath it, show off the cannon. Not on target. Stripes get on the board here. Down to the final out of the game here potentially. We're going to see Frusco get his pitches in.
He's not throwing 27 pitches. Our pitch count on this graphic is off because he's not throwing 27 pitches to 3 batters.
Yeah, I think it's around.
I don't know if they
pitches.
kept it rolling after Connor Essenberg.
Yeah.
He's thrown about 13, I think.
So we're safe.
So he's
we get another.
We're not blowing him out to finish the game here.
Nick Partridge, interesting guy. We haven't really got to talk too much on Partridge. No, he's a Florida commit. His dad, Dominique, obviously a 28th round selection of the Braves back in 2001. We've seen so many players at this event whose dads have played pro ball. the next generation getting to carry on that legacy a little bit here in the 2025 class.
Yeah, and there's always the interesting nature versus nurture growing up around the game, and not so much with someone who played, in the minors for a few years, but he comes to this with a dad who knows what the process is like and how hard it can be. And I think a lot of times you see these guys whose dads played a little bit of pro ball, and then their sons are much, much better. And we'll see. Nick Partridge is interesting. He can swing it a little bit. There's some projection. I think if he fills out, there's going to be some more power. Looks like he could add a good amount of strength to his 6'2" frame. Couldn't turn around there's that invisible fastball. Doesn't light up the radar gun, but really tough to see.
And that's going to do it from the 2025 MLB Draft Combine game. We're clocking in 7-3 victory for the Stars. A lot of fun was had by everybody involved. Jim, Jonathan, let's go over some last final thoughts. 2025 game in the books, high school showcase. Give me some final takeaways from the action we saw tonight.
Well, Bruno Agbiani, certainly had a nice day at the plate, got on base 4 times. I guess I had to pick one.
The Brock Selvage, Jim Callis MVP.
Yes.
Or Tanner McDougal would be the hyphenate, because he also stood out and made himself somebody the first one. But if I had to pick a single moment, if we have a Jonathan Mayo play of the game.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh, what?
I need a play of the game?
No, I wasn't making you pick. I was going to say Nathan. I was naming it after you since I'm the MVP award.
Appreciate it.
You're the play of the game. Nathan Eisfelder hitting the 407-foot home run with a wood bat was pretty impressive.
Yeah, and then I'll throw out Parker Rhodes' inning on the mound was very, very impressive. I was pretty pleased with the arms overall. I thought we saw a good combination of stuff and some feel for pitching. You mentioned a lot of the lefties we saw, late in the game, but good baseball overall played. And sometimes these games can get a little messy just because there's so many changes and guys are trying to do too much. And we didn't see too much of that here tonight.
No, it was a pretty cleanly played game, decent amount, strike throwing. Yeah, we got to see a lot of these guys at their best, I believe.
Thanks so much for joining us here from Phoenix, Arizona at the 2025 Draft Combine. All your action's coming your way tomorrow, one more full day. Be sure to tune in MLB Draft, MLB Pipeline. I'm Jesse Borick, joined by Jim Callis, Jonathan Mayo. We're less than a month away from the 2025 draft, folks. Thanks so much for joining us.